Chapter 1, Ch1 Life is strange. You know when people say that actions have consequences? So WTF did I do to deserve this, as I saw myself in a dim cupboard under the stairs staring at the ceiling, or can it be called that? I have read many isekai anime to know what happened to me. But I didn't expect to become tragic main character type she, and that too in Draco words Saint Potter wannabe. How did I get to this conclusion? Well, let's count with me, guys. Pale white skin? Check. Underfed scrawny body? Check. Oh, I didn't know that I was basically a child when I was supposed to be 19? Check. Had round glasses which barely work? Check. Had strange energy coursing through my whole body? Check, but more on that later. Being Harry Potter was not on my to-do list. I am supposed to be olive brown-skinned average Indian studying in college, figuring about my life. What happened to Harry anyway? Did he die? Had I just stolen a child's body? No, I didn't ask for this. There has to be an explanation, I thought, tightening my fist in annoyance. Well, leaving my thoughts aside, I have to gather information now. Getting up from my stiff position, I opened my cupboard door, little shocked they haven't locked me in, but I guess I am still a kid, and saw that it was apparently midnight. It was the same house as the movies. I mentally sighed at relief on the fact that at least I have idea of the house, and don't have to figure it out going to what I assume. The bathroom. I went to the bathroom mirror and saw my face. That thin face, bright green eyes, round glasses, lightning-shaped scar on his forehead, untidy black hair that stick at the back. If one had to describe me, I looked like a mix between Daniel Radcliffe and what book Harry would have looked. My height would probably be around 4 feet-ish, and wearing what I assume Dudley's oversized clothes, I was probably around 5 to 7 year old at this time, which would be before canon at 1985 to 87. Looking at the mirror again, I see the scar, or my resident horcrux of my body / mine. Parent killer, I sighed. This needs to be solved, I thought, and planned to get some food. I'll survive this, don't worry Harry, I'll treat your / my body properly, I thought, and went for the fridge and saw some bread, milk, apples. Shocking considering Dudley and his whole family are not known for health. Well, maybe petunia, vegetables and some bacon. So I decided to take 2 slices of bread, an apple and some milk to the cupboard, and locked myself in and had my little feast. After eating and getting some energy, I thought about my family, and I finally realized that I lost my family, and my mind finally cracked. A feeling of sadness coursed through me, tears dripped from my face as I started missing my mom's sweet voice telling me to focus on life, and dad encouraged me to expand my skill sets, my annoying older brother who always nags me for being too lazy and tells to grind your life. I laughed a little, thinking him posing in front of me screaming grind is youth, and I sobbed softly and curled up my feet, thinking why life is so strange. How did this happen? Did I die? What sort of cosmic joke had landed me in a storybook? I don't even know what to think about my life anymore. Is this all a dream? I thought, and realized no, all this felt too real to be a dream. No, I can't keep crying over spilled milk. I have to get ready for the chaos that would come in the future. First of all, addressing the main superpower I had just got, magic. I closed my eyes and felt the feeling of warm water-like energy flowing in my veins. This sensation felt out of the world, like I just got another sense other than my 5 other senses. Feeling excitement, I curled up my hand like holding a snow globe from bottom and thinking about the magic lore in HP series, something about intent, imagination, and emotions. I willed my energy flowing to my hand. I whispered Lumos while imagining sun. A ball of light came to my hand, so bright in the dim room that I almost blinded myself. Ow, I shrieked. The light disappeared from my hand, and I just stayed there looking at my hand and thought that was too easy. I know from watching and read HP fanfictions that wandless magic was not supposed to be this easy. The only person I know have talent in wandless magic was Dumbledore, Tom Riddle, Snape, and Lily. All were talented, but I didn't know Harry was on that ceiling of talent like I know he is him, and I mean MC, but he was not a genius like Snape, Lily, Dumbledore, and Tom, or eyes at me. I thought, children don't have that much willpower as I have, so that could be the reason, or that Harry was OP and he just wasted his talents and was only good in Quidditch and but he was okay in charms, as I know, like that Oxio on Triwizard Cup in the graveyard. Well, no use speculating now. For now I have to plan my future now. I can't be lazy anymore. To honor my family I would live this life to the fullest. Let's see what I remember. First year Quirrellmort, second year Diary Basilisk, third year Black. I have to free him early, he could be useful. Fourth year Triwizard Cup, fifth year The Prophesy, sixth year Dumbledore Death. I'll change that if he is not evil or manipulative as shown in FICS. Seventh year Horcrux Hunt. I have to remember all this. I won't write this she anywhere like some dumb FIC protagonists. First I'd have to fix this scrawny body, Gauzy. I had to start exercising again. Second, occlumency, or mindscape, to improve memory, in case Dumbledore or Snape has any malicious thoughts. Third, train my magic and so spells I know from my memory. Fourth, made sure Dursleys leave him alone or drop the hostility, whatever works. Okay, that's enough plotting for World Dominikoff. I mean for my survival. This body needed sleep, so let's sleep for now. As soon as I dozed off to the realm of Morpheus, suddenly I hear a voice. Oi, would you wake up? Chapter 2, Ch2 Symbiosis. Oi, would you wake up? I jolted awake, except, I wasn't in the cupboard anymore. Instead, I was floating in a vast white void, nothing above, nothing below. Just endless blankness. In front of me stood Harry Potter. Well, maybe not him. I blinked, looking down at myself. My own body, 5'9", olive skin, light beard, messy hair, white clothes, stood there, perfectly clear. I wasn't Harry here. Same messy black hair, same scar, same face, but his presence was different, heavier, older, like the body was just a costume he wore. You look like you're trying to understand quantum physics and failing, he chuckled, his voice sound heavy like an adult man. I'm not the boy you think I am. Just call me Rob, if you like. Where the hell am I? I asked, keeping myself calm like I am not have a chat with a godlike being. In your mindscape, Rob said, casually posing his hand like Tony Stark showing Jericho missiles at the endless white. Think of it as the waiting room of your soul. Leaving that aside, you adapted quickly after your death. I am actually kinda impressed. My chest tightened. So I did die, hey, looking around see my mindscape, so a occlumency type she. Rob looked at me with pity, shrugging. Ceiling fan. Dropped on your head while you were asleep. Quick and painless, at least. I felt my stomach twist. That's it. That's how I go out. I was disappointed. A ceiling fan of all things. Well, it kinda makes sense that fan was making creepy noises for far too long, but well, shit happens. What? Disappointed that Truckcun didn't visited you like most people? Rob replied, amused. But when I saw your soul drifting in the void, I saw in your head that you wished for a life full of fun and adventures and figured, why not? Harry Potter's body had just given out. Hunger, neglect, the usual Dursley cruelty. So I slipped you in. My shoulders relaxed like a weight has been lifted from my shoulders. So I didn't steal his body, he really died, Rob said sadly, but I gave you his memories. His pain, his struggles, his childhood. So you can carry them with you. So you'll understand. The moment I let that sink in, a sharp ache echoed through my head. Images too many, too fast poured into me like an expanding infinity castle. A cupboard door slamming shut. Petunia's cold eyes narrowing with disgust. Dudley's fists pounding into a small, helpless body. The gnawing emptiness of going to bed hungry, night after night after night after night after night. I staggered, clutching my head in pain like my head is being splitted apart by Moses. These memories, I croaked. They're his, Rob interrupted softly, though his face remained unfazed. Harry's. I didn't bring you here to erase him. I brought you here to carry him. To live his story, but with your will behind it. The flood slowed, settling into cracks of my mind, becoming part of me. My heart raced with anger, pity, and something else I couldn't name. Rob's green eyes glowed faintly. Now you know the truth. The Harry Potter of this world was broken before his tale even began. You, however, you might just change everything. I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. You had no right, I spat. No right to play God with me, or with him. Rob tilted his head, still wearing Harry's familiar face. And yet, here you are. Alive. Breathing. With power in your veins. Do you wish I had let you drift into nothingness instead? That's not the point. My voice cracked, fury boiling under my skin. You just plucked me out like some piece on a board. You let a child die just to stick me in his place. Rob's expression softened, though the weight behind his words didn't. The child was already gone. I didn't kill him, and I didn't save him either. His story ended that night. All I did was stop you from fading. My chest heaved, anger battling guilt, confusion, and a sharp stab of helplessness like someone kicked my dog and ran away. Then why me? I demanded. Why not someone stronger, smarter, someone who actually deserves to carry this? I am just your average Joe. Rob smirked faintly. Because you'll ask those questions. Because you care enough to rage at me right now instead of bowing down. That is exactly why. Rob's gaze sharpened, almost clinical, as he studied me. There's one more matter to deal with before you can truly begin, he said. Before I could ask, a searing pain stabbed through my scar. Clutching my head, the void around us rippling like water disturbed by a stone. From the white nothingness, a shape began to crawl into existence. A small, twisted child's body, skin raw and grey, limbs too thin, red eyes like burning coals. As I steadied my head I saw the figure. I knew instantly what it was. Him. The malformed child hissed, a sound more animal than human, and its red eyes locked onto me with hatred so deep it burned. My knees buckled. That's Voldemort, Rob finished flatly. Or rather, the fragment of his soul lodged inside you. A parasite you were never meant to carry. The Horcrux, Voldemort screeched, scrambling toward me on its frail limbs. But Rob simply raised his hand. The creature froze mid-motion, suspended in the air as though invisible chains bound it. Its face twisted, eyes wide with pure terror, for the first time looking less like a demon and more like a cornered animal. Ugly, isn't it? Rob muttered, his voice calm, almost bored. All that power, reduced to this pathetic scrap. The Horcrux thrashed soundlessly as light gathered in Rob's palm. Then, with a snap of his fingers, the twisted child erupted in a blinding flare like sun breathing, obliterated in an instant, leaving not even ash behind. The void fell silent. The pressure in my skull vanished. I gasped, realizing for the first time how heavy that presence had been, and how light I suddenly felt without it. Rob dusted off his hands as though it had been nothing more than a chore. Well, more like demon slaying. There. No more passenger in your soul. That weight was his, not yours. Now, you are only you. I stood there, chest heaving, still stunned by the sudden silence inside my head. For the first time, the scar didn't burn. The constant, gnawing static at the edge of my mind was gone. But as I steadied myself, I felt something else. The magic inside me warm, flowing like a hidden river had changed. Now it pulsed, heavy and vibrant, filling every inch of me. My veins felt alive, my skin tingled with energy, my breath itself seemed charged. Rob watched me carefully, lips twitching into a faint smile. Noticed it, did you? With the parasite gone, your core can expand freely. No more leaks, no more interference. What's left is yours, dense, potent, and stronger than before. I flexed my hand, willing the energy forward. It surged instantly, eager, responsive like it had been waiting all along. A small orb of light flickered to life above my palm, brighter, steadier than before and also chantless. My eyes widened. It's different. Stronger. Cleaner. I thought I was already talented, but this is even more broken. Lily's sacrifice gave this body a reservoir, a protection baked into the soul, Rob explained, his tone almost admiring. But with the Horcrux clinging to you, that gift was suffocated. Now that I've burned away the rot, her blessing shines through. It amplifies your magic, makes it denser, purer. I stared at the glowing orb in my hand, feeling its warmth seep into me. For the first time since waking here, I didn't feel cursed. I felt chosen. The orb in my palm flickered once before dissolving back into my skin, leaving a faint hum of power behind. Rob folded his arms, his borrowed face unreadable. Consider this your true beginning. No Horcrux. No chains. Only your will, and the path you choose. The white void around us began to ripple, thinning like mist in sunlight. My heart pounded, not from fear this time, but from the weight of possibility. For the first time since waking in this nightmare-like dream, I felt something new. Hope. And with that, the void swallowed itself, and I was gone. Chapter 3, Ch3 Home Sweet Home. Petunia's POV. Petunia Disley had always considered herself ordinary. Ordinary looks, ordinary school life, an ordinary dream of marrying a proper man and raising a proper family in a proper home. But her sister Lily had always been different. Beautiful in a way Petunia never could be, adored by neighbors and teachers alike. And then came that letter. That damned letter with the strange crest and impossible words. Witch. Hogwarts. Magic. Lily had been chosen for something Petunia could never touch. She remembered writing a desperate letter to the old man who signed Lily's acceptance. Take me instead. Please. I'll do better. I'll work harder than her. Don't leave me behind. The reply never came. From that day, jealousy became the quiet ache she carried. Lily went off to her magical castle, while Petunia stayed behind, marrying Vernon solid, reliable, comfortably dull Vernon and shutting magic out of her life for good. Or so she told herself. But the night the boy arrived, bundled on her doorstep under the stars, Petunia felt the ache stir again. Lily was gone. Dead. And the last piece of her world was now staring back at Petunia in the form of a sleeping child with dark hair and a lightning-shaped scar. She remembered the letter that came with him, words written in that same familiar, infuriatingly polite tone. Explaining how her sister had died. Explaining why the child had to stay here, with her. Explaining nothing about how she was supposed to raise him. Petunia clenched the blanket tighter around the boy. Vernon muttered something about freakishness, about dumping him at an orphanage. But Petunia didn't move. She couldn't. Because for all her bitterness, for all her anger, she saw Lily's face in his. And that hurt more than she'd ever admit. Petunia carried the boy inside, her hands stiff but careful. Vernon grumbled the whole way, but she barely heard him. Her eyes stayed fixed on the child's scar, glowing faintly in the porch light. Lily, why did you leave me this? Every time Harry breathed, every twitch of his tiny hands, it was like watching Lily's ghost sleeping in her arms. It stung, sharp and deep. A reminder of everything she had lost, and everything she had never been allowed to touch. The bitterness whispered to her, he's just like her. Another freak. Another reminder that you'll never be enough. But something softer whispered back, he's only a child. He's her child. Petunia pressed her lips thin, burying the softness under layers of steel. She told Vernon she'd keep him, but on our terms. Harry would be clothed, fed, kept alive but never spoiled, never praised, never allowed to grow proud of what he was. Because if she let herself be kind, if she let herself love him, she feared she'd break all over again. So Petunia made her choice. The boy would live in their house, but never truly belong. A safe prison, built from jealousy and grief. As she laid him in the spare cot Dudley had long since outgrown, she turned away quickly, not letting herself linger. Behind her, the baby stirred, making a soft, almost questioning noise. For just a second, Petunia's hand twitched, wanting to reach back. To soothe him. To tell him he wasn't alone. But she didn't. She couldn't. Instead, she whispered to herself. This is my house. My family. And I will not let magic ruin it again. And with that, Petunia dismally closed the door, sealing both Harry's childhood, and her own heart. Harry's POV. The sound of dishes clattering in the kitchen yanked me out of sleep. I blinked against the dim light sneaking through the cupboard door cracks, my mind still replaying last night's Zoom call in the void. Rob's words, that's a little cliché, isn't it? The Horcrux burning away, no getting demon slayed. The surge of magic still humming in my veins. I stretched my small, frail limbs and exhaled slowly. Time to start making this body mine. Let the grind prevail. Through the wood I heard Petunia's clipped voice, Vernon's low grumble. The familiar rhythm of their morning routine, already carrying the weight of disdain meant for the boy. It was only a matter of time before the cupboard door was yanked open and I was barked at. But this time, I wasn't just going to take it. I closed my eyes and reached inward, finding that reservoir of power again. It came easier now, thicker, sharper, responsive to my will. I didn't need incantations. I just needed focus. Legilimency. The word formed in my mind like a blade. I pictured threads of my pain, my hunger, my loneliness, woven into a memory spear. And I pushed. The result wasn't perfect, it was clumsy, raw, but I felt the spell slip out, brushing against Petunia first. A sharp gasp echoed faintly from the kitchen, as though a memory not her own had flashed in her head. I pressed harder, adding a trickle of confidence, subtle and wavering. Not enough to control. Just enough to blur edges, loosen resistance, make sympathy linger where none had existed before. It stung, draining more magic than I expected, and I felt the grip slide after a few heartbeats. I clenched my jaw and reapplied, steady this time, anchoring the mix of pain and pity into both Petunia and Vernon. When I opened my eyes again, my chest was tight, sweat dampening my brow. But deep inside, I felt the bond settle thin, fragile, but real. A new plan formed. If I could keep dripping sympathy into their minds, weaving guilt with confusion, then maybe I could reshape them. Not into parents, a joke if you count, seeing Dudley, they'd never be that, but into tools. Into shields. Into something useful for the future I needed to survive. From the kitchen, Vernon muttered something again. But this time his tone carried hesitation. And Petunia, her silence lingered longer than before. I smirked faintly in the dark. Good. It's working. I am him. The toast was only the start. Dudley got his usual pig-like filling, mountain of eggs and bacon, while I was left with scraps, a crust of bread, a strip of bacon fat no one wanted. Still, compared to the hunger gnawing at me yesterday, it was fuel. Enough to keep moving. The day passed the way it always did, chores. I scrubbed dishes until my fingers wrinkled, weeded the garden under the burning sun, and dragged Vernon's heavy trash bins to the curb. My body was weak, the muscles thin and stringy, but I pushed harder with each task. Every ache was a reminder, I had to get stronger. Grind is on. By afternoon, when the Dursleys were distracted, I slipped out. The park wasn't far, and Dudley and his gang weren't around today. The swings creaked in the breeze, the slide gleamed faintly in the sun. Perfect. I found a quiet corner behind the jungle gym and began my routine, push UPS, sit UPS, squats only a little, I am still a kid. My small arms trembled, my lungs burned, but I forced myself to keep count. 10. 15. 20. That's the limit. Sweat stung my eyes, but I didn't stop. When my body refused to go further, I switched to running laps around the empty field. Each step was agony, but also progress. I can't rely only on magic, I'll build this body into something unbreakable. Grind is eternal. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. I wiped the sweat off my brow, chest heaving, and slipped back toward number 4 before the Dizzleys noticed I was gone. A little confused and they ignored. Dinner was no different, leftovers scraped from Dudley's plate. Cold potatoes, a half-eaten sausage. I ate in silence, eyes lowered, and Vernon didn't complain. Petunia's glance lingered for a second, but she said nothing. When the dishes were done and the house quiet, I crawled back into my cupboard. My body ached, every muscle screaming, but my mind buzzed with energy. I closed my eyes, reaching for that dense, flowing magic inside me. It thrummed stronger than yesterday, like a muscle flexing after being freed of chains. I practiced small pulses, light in my palm, a flicker of intent at my fingertips, until exhaustion pulled me under weight. I need food to sustain my hard work, I am still hungry. I closed my eyes and stretched my hand to the door, it clicked. I stretched my hand out and focused on the fridge, door opened and 2 slices of bread and an apple and half cup of milk come floating towards me. I devoured the food quickly and put the cup in the sink. My stomach not straining anymore. And as I drifted to sleep, I whispered to myself. Step by step. Spell by spell. They won't see me coming. Grind is eternal. Next morning. The cupboard door creaked open earlier than usual. I blinked against the sudden light and saw Petunia's thin silhouette framed in the hall. Normally, her voice would be sharp, almost venomous, up. Breakfast. Now. But today, she hesitated. Her eyes lingered on me longer than they should have, lips parting as if to say something more. For the briefest moment, her gaze flicked to the scar on my forehead, then to my thin arms clutching the blanket. Her jaw tightened. Get dressed, she said finally, but the edge was dulled. I climbed out, noting every twitch in her face, every shift in her voice. The spell had worked. Not completely but enough to make her falter. Enough to plant the seed. My sea cough. In the kitchen, Vernon sat grumbling over his morning paper. Usually, he barely acknowledged my existence beyond a snarl. But when I shuffled in, barefoot and small, his eyes flicked up. And something flickered there. Not kindness, not warmth but unease. Like a man remembering a dream he couldn't shake. He grunted. Sit. Don't dawdle. Petunia set a piece of toast on the table. Not for Dudley, not for Vernon, for me. Thin, dry, but food all the same. I almost laughed, but held it back. Instead, I muttered a small thank you and tore into it, letting the silence stretch. Every bite tasted like victory. Petunia busied herself at the counter, but her hands trembled faintly. Vernon cleared his throat more than once, glaring at the paper like it had personally offended him. Neither of them said anything more. But they didn't need to. Their hesitation was proof enough. I chewed, calm on the outside, burning with victory inside. This is only the beginning of the story of my life. Sympathy will hold them. Confusion will keep them pliant. And when I'm strong enough, they'll be more than tormentors. They'll be assets. The sun broke through the kitchen window, washing the table in pale gold. For the first time since waking in this cursed yet promising life, I didn't feel powerless. I felt in control. All hail the grind. Author note. Well, that wrap up. Harry's starting now. He is gonna go guns blazing on the grind and a little plotting here and there. If you have any suggestions, make sure to comment them. I'll appreciate constructive criticism. Also, there is gonna be goal from now on. For every 150 Power Stone 1 bonus chapter. For every 5 comments 1 bonus chapter. For every 50,000 V's 1 bonus chapter. CA-911P2. Chapter 4, CH4 Night Changes. The days blurred into months, and the months into a year. Every morning began the same slaver chores. Dishes, gardening, scrubbing floors, hauling bins. At first, my body complained, weak and trembling. But I pushed through, turning each task into training. Every sweep of the broom hardened my arms. Every trip up the stairs strengthened my legs. When the Dursleys thought I was asleep, I slipped out to the park under the cover of night. There, beneath the pale glow of the street lamps, I ran until my lungs burned, lifted what I could find, and practiced push-ups and squats in the shadows. The playground became my gym, the night air my companion. Grind is eternal. But it wasn't just my body I honed. Magic flowed thicker each week, eager to be shaped. I drilled the basics, Lumos, Nox, Oxio, Leviosa until they obeyed my will as naturally as breathing. I experimented, stretching wandless control, layering intent with imagination. Sometimes spells fizzled, sometimes they backfired, but I learned. And with each failure came progress. Meanwhile, the Dursleys changed. Slowly, subtly, piece by piece. A gentle push of legilimency here, a whisper of confidence there. I laced their dreams with guilt and nudged their thoughts toward tolerance. Not perfect, never perfect, but enough. Meals improved. Protein found its way onto my plate. Chicken, eggs, beans. My body filled out, muscles forming where bones once jutted. By the time I turned 8, I no longer looked like a half-starved ghost. And the changes touched them as well. Vernon, under my quiet influence, cut back on his indulgence. The gut shrank, the double chin faded, and in its place was a man who looked almost respectable. Petunia, freed from bitterness and encouraged by subtle nudges, began to care for herself again. The sharpness in her face softened, her eyes regained a hint of youthful brightness, beauty she had long buried under jealousy. Even Dudley slimmed down, losing the piggish rolls of fat as his meals grew healthier, his body shaped by small shifts in routine and my nudges away from gluttony. Now he looks like a child rather than a piglet. Hatred had dulled into tolerance. Resentment into uneasy coexistence. They didn't love me. They never would. But they fed me. They clothed me. They treated me as part of the household, if not family. And in this world, that was enough. I had bent their reality to my will. And I was only just getting started. At 8 years old, I stood taller, stronger, and sharper than the boy who had first woken up in that cupboard. Results of my grind. The mirror no longer showed a scrawny waif in Dudley's oversized cast-offs. My body had lean muscle, my eyes clearer, my skin healthier. But the changes inside mattered more. Magic flowed through me like a steady current now. Not wild, not chaotic, but disciplined. I had trained it like a muscle, bending it to my will until it responded almost before I thought. Wandless control came naturally, though imperfect, some spells fizzled, others overpowered, but the foundation was solid. Still, I knew this was only the beginning. I needed more than light or levitation tricks. I needed defense, subtlety, and control. Occlumency. The art of shielding the mind would be essential when Dumbledore or Snape eventually tried to pry into me. Legilimency. I had already dabbled, but mastery would turn people into open books. And, above all, combat magic. Stunning, disarming, binding. I'd have to build an arsenal long before Hogwarts even entered the picture. The Dursleys were proof enough of my progress. A year ago, they had despised me. Now, they tolerated me. Soon, with continued nudges, they would respect me, maybe even fear me. That was the lesson I had carved into myself. Magic was power, but only if paired with discipline. Without it, even great wizards could waste their gifts. With it, even an orphan in a cupboard could bend the world. I lay back on my bed that night, no longer the cupboard, but a proper room. Vernon had begrudgingly ceded to me and stared at the ceiling. "I'm not the boy you wanted me to be," I whispered into the dark, voice steady. "I'm something else. And when the time comes, I'll be ready." By the time I turned 9, my magic wasn't the only thing that had changed. Vernon, slimmed down and oddly proud of it, decided Dudley needed discipline. Petunia, nudged in the right direction, agreed. So Dudley and I were shoved into a local boxing gym twice a week. At first, Dudley strutted like a rooster, certain he'd pound me into the mat. But months of midnight training had hardened my body, and in the ring, he learned quickly I wasn't the same cousin he used to bully. Our first spar ended with me bloodying his nose. He cried, not from pain but from shock. That night, in the changing room, Dudley slumped beside me, staring at the floor. "I was a right git, wasn't I?" he muttered. "More than a bit," I said, grinning through my split lip. "Sorry," he whispered. It was awkward, clumsy, but genuine. From then on, our matches became less about proving who was Sigma and more about pushing each other forward. By the end of that year, we were sparring partners, almost like brothers, iron sharpening iron. Outside the ring, I kept grinding. Morning runs, chores turned workouts, late-night magical drills. My control improved, my body sharpened. The Dursleys provided proper meals now, and protein fueled the growth. I felt myself becoming something beyond what either Harry Potter or my old self could have been. Grind, baby, grind. Still, I wasn't reckless. I knew I couldn't isolate myself from the wizarding world forever. I needed eyes, ears, a thread of connection. That thread came in the form of Mrs. Arabella Figg. The old neighbor with her endless cats and cabbage-smelling house. I visited her one afternoon under the pretense of running errands. She was surprised, wary even. But over time, I let subtlety guide my words. Small phrases, careful hints. That I was safe. That I was different from what she'd been told. At first, she resisted, clearly following some unseen instructions. But I was patient. I let her see me not as a freak, but as a boy, polite, sharp, oddly mature for his age. And when the time was right, I planted the confidence gently, like a seed in her thoughts. Take me to the leaky cauldron someday. Let me see the world I belong to. Her brows had furrowed, lips pursed, but she didn't say no. That was enough. I lay in bed that night, Dudley snoring faintly in the room next door, my muscles sore from training and my magic buzzing under my skin. At 9 years old, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Between the ages of 9 and 10, my life was no longer about survival, it was about refinement. Magic bent to me with a precision that shocked even myself. What began as lifting pebbles in the park grew into heaving entire boulders into the air. I have become too OP, I thought giddily. By my 10th birthday, I could suspend over 20 tons without breaking a sweat. Hell yeah, baby! Occlumency had become my constant brother in arms. I quickly learned that emptying the mind was a false theory from fanfics. Thoughts never truly stopped. Instead, I built shields. Layered constructs within my mindscape, Infinity Castle style, where I could bury my truths under layers of useless buildings like how Musen hid himself. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to keep me safe from casual intrusion. For now. Legilimency, however, was where I truly excelled. At first, it was glimpses, surface emotions, fleeting impressions. But with practice, I learned to peel back layers, passively scheming thoughts without anyone realizing. A nudge of intent let me dive deeper, sifting through memories like pages in a book. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and powerful. I was progressing faster here than in occlumency itself. the Dursleys remained at the level of tolerance. Meals, clothing, a room of my own. That was all I needed. Dudley, however, was different. Our time in the boxing gym and the quiet conversations after had forged something like brotherhood between us. He no longer saw me as the cousin to bully but as his equal, maybe even someone to look up to. When I said brothers before hoes, he looked at me weirdly and said, "What's a hoe?" I stayed silent. At school, I excelled without difficulty. Teachers praised me for sharp answers, quick wit, and discipline beyond my age. They don't realize how close they were. Harry hunting was a thing of the past, Dudley himself made sure of that. Instead, I buried myself in the school library, devouring books far beyond my grade. Latin, Sanskrit, the root tongues of magic itself. Physics and chemistry, through to university-level texts. Knowledge was a weapon, and I intended to sharpen it to its edge. Science was important for alchemy stuff, as I remember. Meanwhile, my quiet campaign with Arabella Figg reached its conclusion. 6 months of subtle confidence, gentle nudges, and careful persuasion wore down her resistance. Chapter 5, Ch. 5 This is magic. Mrs. Figg walked stiffly at my side, her handbag clutched like a lifeline. "Remember, boy," she muttered as we approached a crooked little pub sandwiched between two larger buildings. "Don't dawdle, don't draw attention. This is dangerous ground for someone your age." The sign creaked faintly in the breeze, the leaky cauldron. I paused at the threshold, the faint hum of magic pressing against my skin. For the first time, I was standing before the gateway into the world that was supposed to be mine all along. Inside, the air was thick with pipe smoke, laughter, and the clatter of mugs. Witches in worn robes haggled over parchment, a warlock muttered into his tea, and owls hooted from cages in the corner. The bartender, Tom, gave me a gap-toothed grin, though his eyes lingered on my scar a little too long. But Mrs. Figg hurried me past, muttering excuses, until we reached the brick wall in the back courtyard. With a tap of her wand, the stones shifted and folded inward, revealing a hidden archway. And there it was. Diagon Alley. What a pun rowling! The street unfolded before me like something out of a dream. Cobblestones shimmered faintly underfoot, lined with crooked shops stacked side by side like old friends. Signs creaked in the breeze. Flourish and blots, its windows crammed with towers of spellbooks. Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions, bolts of cloth glittering faintly with enchantments. Slug and Jigger's apothecary, the air thick with the sharp tang of herbs and potion fumes. Aesop's Owl Emporium, cages filled with feathers, hoots, and gleaming eyes. And farther down, the towering silhouette of Ollivanders, its windows glinting with the promise of wands that had chosen legends. Families bustled past with bags of cauldrons, parchment, and robes. Children pointed eagerly at displays of sweets and sugar plums, or broomsticks gleaming proudly in quality Quidditch supplies. The alley felt alive, buzzing with magic, history, and possibility. But above it all, my eyes were drawn to the great white building at the alley's heart. Marble, gleaming in the sunlight. Stern goblins stood guard at the bronze doors, their eyes sharp, their posture unyielding. Gringotts. I felt my lips curve into a faint smile. Finally. Mrs. Figg cleared her throat nervously. "Well, boy, we're here. Don't take too long." "I won't," I replied, already striding toward the steps. The marble hall was cold, the weight of gold and history pressing down from every polished stone. Goblins peered at me from their tall counters, quills scratching across endless ledgers. One with a sharp nose and scarred hands approached. His black eyes studied me like a merchant appraising a suspicious gem. "I am Griphook," he rasped. "You are for." "Claim access to Potter Holdings," I said calmly, though my small body hardly looked the part. "I am Harry James Potter. And I request to see the account manager for my family's vaults." Griphook's eyes narrowed. "Do you have a key?" I shook my head. "No. An adult sponsor? A guardian's writ? Again, I shook my head. His lip curled. Then by Gringotts law, you have no access. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Then test me. That made him pause. Around us, quills stilled, and 2 other goblins glanced up. I don't want guardians. Especially not the one you think, I continued, meeting his gaze unflinching. If Albus Dumbledore comes asking questions, you tell him nothing. Do you understand me? The goblin's expression sharpened. Bold words for a child. Not bold. Careful. I folded my arms. Dumbledore doesn't need to know what I have, or what I'm building. You do your tests, prove who I am, and then we speak like partners. Otherwise, you've wasted the chance to make an ally who respects your craft. For a long moment, silence pressed heavy between us. Then Griffook's mouth twitched into something sharp, almost a smile. Very well. Follow. I was led past the public halls, deeper into Gringotts' guarded corridors. Finally, we entered a chamber where a runed pedestal stood, glowing faintly. This, Griphook explained, is the bloodstone. Touch it, and it will verify your lineage. Should you lie, it will burn you. Should you speak truth, it will reveal all. I placed my hand on the stone without hesitation. The surface was cool, then searing hot before a pulse of light spread outward. Runes flared across the chamber walls, etching themselves in bright scarlet. The goblins watched as words shimmered into existence. Harry James Potter, son of James Fleamont Potter and Lily Evans Potter. Heir to the ancient and most noble house of Potter. The glow faded, leaving only silence. Griphook inclined his head, respect gleaming in his dark eyes. Identity confirmed. He escorted me to an office marked in silver script, Snag Rock, Senior Account Manager. Inside, an older goblin rose from behind a heavy oak desk. His golden spectacles glinted as he bowed low. Lord Potter, he said smoothly. We had not expected you so soon, nor alone. I slid into the chair opposite, keeping my tone firm. I'm not here to waste time. And remember that Dumbledore must not know. He is not my guardian. He is not my master. My affairs are mine alone. Snagrock's lips curled into something sharp. At last, a Potter who understands discretion. He pulled a glowing ledger forward and began. Your trust vault, which was created at the time of your birth, contains 493,744 galleons, 12,359 sickles, and 365 nuts. Your main ancestral family vault contains 74,585,549 galleons, 582,218 sickles, and 36,722 nuts. Even prepared, my pulse quickened at the numbers. Wealth beyond kingdoms. Enough to build empires. Snagrock's grin widened, showing his sharp teeth. And now, Lord Potter, the real work begins. Snagrock's long fingers tapped the glowing ledger. We have not yet spoken of your parents' personal vaults. These are separate from the family holdings, meant for their individual use during their lives. 2 smaller ledgers appeared, glowing faintly with Potter crests. Your father's vault contains 237,893 galleons, 8,214 sickles, and 491 nuts. In addition, it holds his personal trunk, filled with notes, pranks, and private belongings, as well as several broomsticks, most notably, a custom model Nimbus prototype he was testing for quality Quidditch supplies. A pang of something sharp twisted in my chest at the mention of James. I forced my voice steady. And my mother's. Snagrock adjusted his spectacles, voice smoothing. Your mother's vault contains 82,447 galleons, 5,732 sickles, and 276 nuts. Within rests her trunk heavily warded, its locks keyed to her bloodline. He continued. The contents include her school journals, research notes on charms and potions, and several personal belongings. Priceless, though modest compared to the main family treasury. I sat straighter. Her journals. A connection to the woman I had never truly known. Snagrock continued, his tone growing weightier. These are distinct from the main Potter vault. That holds the collective wealth of your line, heirlooms, ancient jewelry, records, and the journals of Potter's past. To open it is to inherit not just gold, but legacy. His sharp gaze met mine. Tell me, Lord Potter, what do you intend to do with this fortune? Many heirs squander their birthright within decades. We goblins do not respect squanderers. I folded my hands, meeting him evenly. I intend to expand it. I know what's coming in the world outside these walls. Both magical and muggle. I want investments placed where they will grow into empires. Snagrock's teeth flashed. Then speak. I leaned forward, voice calm and deliberate. In the muggle world, I want early stakes in oil and energy. Companies like British Petroleum and emerging Middle Eastern ventures will remain lucrative for decades. I also want shares in the coming technology boom, computing firms, telecommunications, and eventually companies like Microsoft and Apple. And pharmaceuticals, the world will always need medicine. Snagrock's quill scratched rapidly across parchment. His eyes gleamed with interest. In the magical world, I continued, I want majority shares in quality Quidditch supplies. The sport is growing, and brooms are the future. The daily profit is unstable, but with proper ownership, it can become a propaganda machine as well as a business. Invest in potion ingredient farms, herbs, rare plants, anything that will rise in value when potions become more regulated. And finally, I want quiet stakes in Ollivander's competitors, because no monopoly lasts forever. Snagrock's lips curled into a feral grin. You think like a goblin, Lord Potter. Ambitious. Long-sighted. Ruthless. I allowed myself a thin smile. That's the idea. Snagrock cleared his throat as junior goblins brought forward a series of glowing parchments, contracts shimmering with goblin runes. We shall formalize your investments now, Lord Potter. You have a remarkable fortune to work with, and wisely placed, it will shape both worlds. He tapped his quill and the figures appeared in glowing ink. Muggle Ventures, initial investments. British Petroleum and Middle Eastern oil fields 150,000 galleons, conversion managed through discrete goblin channels. Energy demand will remain dominant well into the next century. Pharmaceutical corporations, Glaxo and smaller research firms, 100,000 galleons. The medicine boom will only grow. Emerging technology, Microsoft, Apple, IBM shares, 200,000 galleons. Computing will dominate the next age. Telecommunications, Vodafone, AT&T Europe division, 50,000 galleons. The rise of global communication is inevitable. Magical ventures, initial investments. Quality Quidditch supplies, early majority stake, 85,000 galleons. Secures retail dominance in the broom industry. Daily profit, silent stake, 15%, 120,000 galleons. Influence over wizarding media and political narratives. Potion ingredient farms, Wiltshire and Scottish Highlands, 60,000 galleons. Growing demand ensures steady profit. Firebolt Consortium, backroom deal with Randolph Spudmore, Firebolt inventor, 150,000 galleons. The Firebolt line will eclipse Nimbus by the mid-90s, guaranteeing astronomical returns and prestige. The Potter Vaults. After the ink dried, Snagrock motioned for Griphook to escort me deeper into the caverns. The cart screeched along rails, torchlight whipping past, until we stopped before a set of iron doors. James Fleamont Potter, personal vault, Griphook announced. The doors swung open to reveal neat stacks of gold, though nothing compared to the family fortune. My eyes, however, were drawn to the side, a battered trunk with Gryffindor stickers peeling off, and several broomsticks gleaming under stasis charms. One bore the Nimbus crest, though sleeker, thinner, a prototype. I knelt, running a hand over the trunk. James. Harry's dad, I thought in pity. The cart rattled deeper, stopping again. Lily Evans Potter, personal vault. Inside, coins glittered less brightly, but here it wasn't the gold that mattered. A slim, rune-sealed trunk rested against the wall, humming faintly with protective wards keyed to blood. I touched the surface and felt it respond to me, the lock glowing before clicking open. Inside were stacks of journals, their neat script visible on the top page, potion formulas, charms experiments, thoughts scribbled in careful, looping letters. A life's work, preserved. Damn, she really cooked with her genius, I thought in awe. Finally, the cart stopped before a gate larger than the others, engraved with the Potter crest in gold and silver. The main Potter vault, Griphook said, his voice softer, almost reverent. Inside was a treasury fit for kings. Mountains of gold, racks of heirloom jewelry, swords and enchanted trinkets glimmering under torchlight. But I didn't linger on the wealth. Instead, I walked past it all, straight to the shelves at the back. Leather-bound tomes and weathered journals lined them, each marked with the crest of generations past. The knowledge of centuries of Potters, their experiments, successes, failures, and wisdom, waiting to be read. I pulled several volumes free, advanced dueling notes, ancestral charms, estate ledgers. Enough to prepare for the future. Closing the trunk at my feet, I whispered into the still air of the vault. Your work won't be wasted. I'll carry it forward. The cart clattered back toward daylight, trunks beside me, journals stacked high. I wasn't just an outsider with a fortune anymore. I was a Potter with a legacy. I am him. Yeah, this is a long one 'cause I am not uploading one after this. Took a lot of time to write it properly. Hopefully the conversations were decent. It's kinda a lore drop, but whatever, it's important in long term, so wait for it to cook. CA-911P2 Chapter 6, CH6I.am.A. Back in Privet Drive, with the trunks locked safely in my room, I opened the first of Lily's journals. Grind can't stop. The parchment smelled faintly of lilac, her handwriting precise and clean, every letter slanted in a patient curve. Zesty at? Charms theory fascinates me. Most wizards think of magic as raw intent, but the wand channels emotion as much as words. Fear weakens spells. Joy sharpens them. I must test this more. Perhaps with a patroness one day. I traced the ink with my finger. She wasn't writing for anyone else, just herself, pouring thought into paper. It felt intimate. I feel like I am spying. Another page. James laughed when I spent 3 nights awake sketching potion formulae. He said he'd marry me if I managed to brew one that cured his hangovers. Perhaps I will, just to spite him. I closed the book gently, an ache settling in my chest. They weren't my parents. Not really. But reading their words, I couldn't deny I cared. Hairy memories probably. They were brilliant, flawed, and very, very human. James's trunk was different. His handwriting was bold, messy, with ink blots splattered across the parchment. Reckless Gryffindor energy for sure. His journal read more like a battlefield log crossed with a prank manual. Note: if you charm dung bombs to smell like roses until they explode, Slughorn doesn't suspect a thing until it's too late. Worth repeating. Defense practice with Sirius today. He's fast, but I'm faster. Tried combining a shield with a disarming curse, worked once, fizzled the next 2 times. Must refine the timing. Beneath the humor, there were flashes of sharpness. Strategies. Experimentation. Notes from duels with the Order. James Potter hadn't just been a jokester, he'd been a fighter. One entry struck me harder than I expected. If the worst happens, if Lily and I fall, I only pray someone will teach Harry more than we had time to. He'll need strength. He'll need cunning. He'll need wisdom beyond trusting others blindly. Dumbledore means well, I think, but no one, not even him, should be followed without question. I let the words sink in. James wasn't condemning Dumbledore. He was reminding himself, and anyone who came after, that even the wisest man alive wasn't infallible. That caution mattered as much as trust. Smart for a Gryffindor. It wasn't bitterness. It was pragmatism. And it made sense. I don't know this world dumbles, but I'll keep my guard up, that's why I am training mind arts. Closing the journal, I thought about what I had now, Lily's sharp intellect, James's boldness, their lessons written in ink for me to claim. Not as a son, because I wasn't their son, but as the inheritor of their unfinished work. I cared for them, in my way. Enough to honor what they left behind. Enough to use it. Nights became quieter once the journals were mine. After chores, training, and schoolwork, I would lock myself away, spreading their trunks across my desk. Every page I turned was like stepping into lives I could never live, yet somehow carried with me. Lily's handwriting was precise, almost mathematical in its rhythm. She saw magic like an engineer saw machines. An architect, if you say. Arithmancy suggests a charm can be layered with micro-intentions, almost like braiding threads. Tried this with Lumos, 1 layer steady light, 1 layer heat. Results, palm slightly burned. Promising. I smiled faintly at that. She was trying to reinvent structured spellcraft before she was even out of Hogwarts. The Ministry would have killed for these notes. Only if they weren't racist on blood. Her potions were no less brilliant. Peppermint stabilizes Wiggenweld, but I wonder if basil might interact better with soporiferous. Try brewing under moonlight for catalyst shift. Every line was meticulous. Experiments recorded like a scientist, control, variation, outcome. She wasn't just a witch, she was a researcher ahead of her time. I traced her words, imagining the hours she must have spent in silence, ink smudging on her fingers. She hadn't written for anyone else, only herself. But now, I was the one who would carry those discoveries forward. James's journals, by contrast, were chaotic. Ink blotted, margins scribbled, spells doodled like they'd been scratched down in the middle of a duel. Yet there was brilliance in the mess. Experiment, charm shield and disarming spell, cast in overlap. Shield holds, disarm leaks through. Calling it guard breaker. Timing crucial. Sirius nearly lost an eyebrow. I tried it myself that night, wandless. The shield flickered, the disarm tugged faintly at a chair across the room. Raw, but real. I grinned. James might have been sloppy, but he was inventive. His notes weren't just magic. They were life. Sirius bet me 10 galleons I couldn't summon 3 butterbeers at once. 1. He owes me. Again. Lily pretends not to laugh at our jokes, but she does. I'm keeping score. If we survive this war, I'll build her the biggest library she's ever seen. She deserves more than hiding in grimy safe houses. I closed that one with a tight chest. He was loud, reckless, maybe immature, but beneath it was loyalty, love, and hope for a future he never got. I can respect that she. I sat back, letting the weight of it all settle. They weren't my parents. I wasn't their Harry. But their words mattered to me anyway. They were more than relics. They were teachers, voices echoing through ink and parchment. Every new spell Lily built, I tested. Every charm James twisted, I refined. Their knowledge became mine, not through blood or birth, but through sheer will. If they had lived, they would have raised a boy to carry their legacy. That boy was gone. But I would honor them in my own way. Not as a son. As an air of intent. Grind prevails. The idea came while I was rereading Lily's notes on layered charms. She described magic as threads that could be woven together, each intention a strand. James, on the other hand, had scribbled about brute force overlaps, smashing two spells into the same instant and seeing what stuck. Their methods clashed. But where Lily saw order and James saw chaos, I saw possibility. What if a shield didn't just block? What if it answered back? So I begin experimenting. Yet I know dangerous, but I can handle that much. Experiment 1. In the silence of my warded room, I began weaving. Wandless obviously. A primary shield construct, steady and wide. A secondary disarming seed, nestled dormant inside the weave. A thin trace thread, adapted from my legilimency work, designed to follow hostile intent back to its source. The weave felt unstable, twitching in my mind like a cord stretched too far. Still, I pressed on. To test it, I conjured a hostile spark myself, wandless, just a sharp push of intent shaped into a jolt. The shield absorbed it. The trace link flared. For an instant, the magic yanked back so violently I nearly flung myself across the room. The shock rattled my teeth, and the notebook on my desk flew off and hit the floor. Unstable. Dangerous. But it worked. Experiment 2. James's old wand. The next night I retrieved the old dueling wand from James's trunk. The wood was aged and scratched, but when I touched it, the connection was immediate. The trace wouldn't notice such an antique. I hope so. This time, the hostile spark was cleaner, stronger. The shield shuddered into being, then retaliated. The wand leapt from my hand with such force it struck the wall and clattered to the floor. My palm burned. Not viable in combat. A shield that injured its own caster was useless. But the principle was sound. I'll refine it like Walter White does his Drew cough IM medicines. Over the next week, I refined the weave, adjusting and rereading until the braid held steady. Lily's notes became my guide to precision. James's timing notes gave me aggression. My own additions made it safe. Added a non-injury clamp, so the trace released the wand gently instead of yanking. Built in a consent lock, ensuring the retaliatory effect only triggered if I deliberately willed it. Developed an audit echo, a faint mental ledger that recorded each activation so I couldn't lose control unnoticed. When I tested again, the wand slipped free and landed softly at my feet. No shock, no backlash. Controlled. Predictable. Genius, I thought gleefully. Spell developing before Hogwarts is really diabolical. Now it's time for most important part, naming. Wizards gave their creations names in Latin, elegant and commanding. If mine was to survive, it deserved no less. The shield was more than a barrier, it was an echo, a reflection that answered aggression. I turned the words over in my head until they fit. Scutum resonare, a resonating shield. A passive-aggressive shield to counter every magic except unforgivables or well maybe very dark magic. I whispered it as the shield shimmered in my room, faintly glowing, alive with its new identity. The name settled into the magic, binding it, making it real. I leaned back, sweating, heart still racing. I had created something wholly new, a spell Lily might have admired, James might have tested recklessly, and the rest of the world might never see until I chose to show it. A shield that didn't just block. It remembered. It answered. And it was mine. I am him. My mindscape had shifted since the day Rob grilled out Voldemort's fragment. No longer a blank void, but a white plane threaded with floating pillars like grey fog in Lotm surrounded by Infinity Castle building, walls I made to protect, each pillar representing thoughts, memories, defenses. When I cast Scutum resonare here, it didn't shimmer like a physical shield. Instead, it became a translucent dome of thought, humming faintly as if tuned to my heartbeat. I tested it against simulated intrusions, intrusive voices, fractured memories, false images I conjured myself. The shield didn't just block them, it bounced them back. When I pushed a false memory into it, the dome shivered and sent the projection spiraling outward, collapsing before it reached me. If an actual legilimens attacked, this might buy me precious seconds. It wasn't perfect, my defenses still leaked stray thoughts, but with each session, the dome became denser, steadier. Scutum resonare wasn't just a shield for spells. It was becoming part of my mind. Another chapter from your favorite author. Hopefully I am a favorite. There are going to be goals now. Bonus chapter on 1. 150 power stones. 2. 50k views. 100k when we reach 1m views. 3. Reviews, excluding mine. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Next chapter will come today and might be the last chapter of pre-Hogwarts arc. CA-911P2. Chapter 7, CH7 11-year-old. Tolerance. That was the balance I struck. Anything warmer would look unnatural. Anything colder would stir old habits of cruelty. Each morning, as Vernon grumbled over his paper and Petunia fussed with her tea, I brushed their surface thoughts. Passive legilimency gave me fragments, Vernon's worries about drills, Petunia's annoyance over appearances. Small nudges of confidence made them overlook their old hatred and settle into weary indifference. Food found its way onto my plate. Vernon stopped barking at me. Petunia allowed me space. Dudley was different. He wasn't just tolerating me. He was changed. At Smelting's prep, I outpaced the curriculum like I am a certain Yagami, doesn't even take effort. Teachers praised me, classmates muttered, but I let it slide. I couldn't reveal too much, perks of being older than others. The school library became my training ground. 69. Row upon row of texts on physics, chemistry, languages. I devoured them, sometimes brushing up over university-level material I was reading before my world hopping. Latin came first, then French, German, Greek then Sanskrit. Magical theory, I realized, was closer to advanced linguistics and physics than most wizards ever guessed. Every night, after boxing and chores, I split my time to grind. Journals of James and Lily magical experimentation. Ancestral tomes of Potters mostly history and politics, family magic was mostly required my full time in Hogwarts, too powerful for a tiny home. Muggle textbooks scientific foundation. Mindscape drills occlumency refinement. Routine became ritual. Grind became second nature. All hail the grind. The morning was ordinary enough, Vernon grumbling about the price of petrol, Petunia fussing with Dudley's packed lunch, and me quietly sipping tea chilling, already thinking about the day's training schedule. Then the post dropped through the slot. I almost ignored it until I noticed one envelope was thicker, heavier, and bore my name in elegant emerald green ink. Mr. H. Potter. The cupboard under the stairs. 4. Privet Drive Little Whinging, Surrey. I blinked. Then I grinned. Well, I murmured, holding it up to the light, happy almost birthday to me. My birthdays had never been anything worth marking. No cakes, no gifts, not even a polite word. But this was better than cake. This was an invitation to the real stage. I broke the seal. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Dear Mr. Potter. We are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted. The words blurred as I chuckled. At last. A school letter that doesn't bore me to death. I schemed the supply list, quirking a brow. Robes, cauldrons, pewter, no mention of boxing gloves, though. Shame. Sarcasm aside, a warmth settled in my chest. It wasn't belonging, I'd never been the boy these people thought I was. But it was opportunity. A bigger library. Real dueling partners. And, perhaps, Answers buried in the halls where James and Lily once walked. I tucked the letter safely away. Not yet. The Dursleys didn't need to know. Not until I was ready. On the morning of my birthday, I slid the letter onto the breakfast table between Vernon's plate and Petunia's teacup. Petunia froze mid-sip. Vernon looked down at the seal, went red, and nearly tore the paper in half just by glaring at it. "What," he growled, "is the meaning of this?" "It means," I said calmly, buttering my toast, "that I've been accepted into Hogwarts. Boarding school. Wizarding school. Full-time." Dudley dropped his fork. "Wait, you're a—" "Yes," I cut him off, sparing him the details. "And I'll be leaving. Which, if we're honest, is what you've wanted since the day I got dumped on your doorstep." Petunia's lips pressed so tightly they disappeared. Vernon puffed like a kettle about to explode. "You will not," Vernon began. "Actually, I will," I interrupted smoothly. "You've tolerated me this long, thanks to circumstances. But here's the deal, once I step out for Hogwarts, I won't step back in. Not as a guest, not as family, not at all." Petunia's eyes flicked to mine, searching. For once, I let her see a sliver of truth, not malice, just the raw edge of resolve. She flinched first. Vernon sputtered. "And what, boy, you think we'll be sorry to see you go? What an a-hole he is." "Not at all," I said dryly. "You'll have your neat little house back, and I'll have a castle. Sounds like a win-win." Dudley's voice was quieter than I expected. "You won't ever come back." I looked at him, "The only one in this house I have cared for now." "No. Not unless you come to me." Which, to be fair, might be entertaining. The silence stretched. Finally, Petunia exhaled sharply, almost a hiss. "Fine. Go. Don't come back. Ever." I stood, folded the letter neatly into my pocket, and smiled. "Happy birthday to me," I said. Then I left the table, the weight of finality pressing behind me. Finally. I thought happy to like this suffocating house. For the first time in my life, Privet Drive was no longer a cage. It was just a place I'd outgrown. By the time I was 11, my body was lean and honed, my magic sharper than any child's should be, and my mind a fortress under construction. The world outside Privet Drive had no idea how prepared I already was. As I sat in my room later that night, Hogwarts letter tucked safely in my trunk, I caught myself smiling. Not at the future, though that was bright, but at a memory from just a few weeks ago. Dudley's birthday. The day had gone smoother than expected. Vernon had dragged us all to the zoo, Dudley waddling ahead with wide-eyed excitement at the promise of cake and exotic animals. Normally I would have dreaded the trip, but this time, I was curious. Because I had a question gnawing at me. I had always believed Parseltongue, the snake language, was Voldemort's gift, forced on me by the Horcrux fragment that Rob had obliterated from my soul. By all logic, it should have died with the piece of him. But something in me whispered otherwise. Flashback *. The reptile house in the section of the zoo was dim, humid, glass tanks stretching along the walls. Children pressed their noses against the glass, Dudley included. I lingered behind, my eyes drawn to a Burmese python curled in lazy coils. Its yellow eyes opened as I approached, fixing on me. My heart thudded. I leaned close, making sure no one else was watching. Then, very softly, I whispered. "Can you hear me?" The snake's head lifted, tongue flicking. A sound answered me, soft hisses that slid into my ears as words. "Yes. I hear." I froze. The language flowed like water, natural and instinctive. "No Horcrux. No Voldemort. Me. You understand me," I breathed. "How the F?" "I do," the snake replied, coils shifting lazily. "Fuse speak. You are, one of us. Shock prickled through me. I had prepared for failure, for silence. Instead, the gift was alive, undeniable. It hadn't been grafted onto me by a monster. It had been mine all along. But how? I whispered one last question, voice shaking slightly. Do you want me to free you? The snake flicked its tongue, eyes half-lidded. No. Too many predators. Too cold beyond here. I am fed, I am safe. Leave me. I nodded. It wasn't a slave to pity. It was content. That was answer enough. When Dudley tugged at my sleeve, pointing at the enclosure, I stepped back as though nothing had happened. He never suspected. None of them did. The days after the zoo weighed on me. Every time I replayed that hissed conversation with the python, my thoughts tangled. Parseltongue wasn't Voldemort's remnant. It was mine. But what did that mean? A blood quirk? A Potter oddity? Some forgotten recessive trait? Some jujutsu type she? I couldn't ignore it. So, in the privacy of my warded room, I began testing. First, I whispered the simplest incantations I knew in Parseltongue. Lumos. Nothing. No spark. Scutum resonare. The shield shivered, but no different than usual. Wingardium Leviosa. The feather I was using as a test subject remained stubbornly still. I tried variations, hissing each syllable, dragging the sibilants longer, pressing intent into the sounds. Magic didn't care. But when I whispered experimental soothing charms, the room felt different. A faint warmth, a softer hum in the air. Nothing measurable, nothing certain, but a suggestion. It bothered me. I scoured Lily's journals for hints, James's too, even the ancestral Potter notes. Nothing. No mention of Parseltongue. No mention of serpentine magic. If it had power, it was hidden deep in the cracks of magical history. For now, it seemed useless, at least in combat or general spell work. A curiosity. A whisper in the dark. But I practiced anyway. Not for power, but for control. I would sit cross-legged, hiss a string of nonsense syllables, and listen to my own voice echoing like water against stone. Awareness was important. If the gift had limits, I needed to know them. And deep down, I suspected it wasn't as pointless as it looked. Because power didn't survive centuries by being ornamental. It survived by hiding. As I closed my notebook, where I had scrawled one line in the corner. Parseltongue, latent. Potential undiscovered. Keep training. I tucked the thought away. Hogwarts would have answers. Or opportunities. Or both. Flashback over asterisk. The Dursleys kept their word. After that breakfast argument, I was a ghost in my own house. Petunia wouldn't look at me, Vernon buried himself in his paper, and Dudley tried once or twice to speak before being silenced with a glare. Fine by me. In a week, their world would no longer matter. If it mattered before anyway. That night, I penned a letter to Gringotts. The quill scratched steadily across parchment. To Snag Rock, Senior Account Manager. I have received my acceptance to Hogwarts. In preparation, I require supervised access to my family vaults for educational funds and, if permitted, an inspection of Potter properties relevant to my inheritance. Please advise on protocol for school supplies and any documents I will need to sign at this stage. Respectfully. Harry J. Potter. The reply came swiftly, delivered by Goblin Courier in a silver-sealed envelope. To Lord Potter. Gringotts acknowledges your acceptance. In accordance with statute, access to your trust vault will be granted for school supplies under supervision of an appointed representative. Snag Rock will oversee. Full estate management remains restricted until statutory age, though property ledgers will be prepared for your review. Snag Rock. Efficient, as always. A few days later, there was a thunderous knock on Privet Drive's front door. Vernon opened it, and his face drained of color. "Good morning, Dursleys," boomed a voice like rolling thunder. Rubeus Hagrid filled the doorway, his beetle-black eyes twinkling under wild hair and beard. He carried a pink umbrella that I knew was far more than it seemed. Petunia let out a strangled squeak. Vernon muttered something about freakish giants. Dudley gawked. I, meanwhile, leaned casually against the hall wall and said, "You must be Hagrid. Keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts, if I recall correctly." The giant blinked. That's right. Yet are Harry Potter, o' course. Last I checked." I smiled faintly. "No need for dramatics. Mrs. Figg already told me about the magical world, and I've had prior exposure." Hagrid looked stunned, then muttered, "Well, that makes things a bit easier." "Much easier," I agreed. "Now, shall we?" Behind me, Petunia hissed, "Go, then. And don't come back." I paused at the threshold, glanced back once. "Trust me. I won't." Chapter 8, Ch8 Shopping the Ferret. The brick wall of the leaky cauldron shifted and folded away under Hagrid's tapping. Beyond lay Diagon Alley, sprawling and alive with magic. Cauldrons steamed in shop windows. Owls hooted from cages. Children dragged parents toward broom displays, faces pressed to glass. The smell of ink and parchment mingled with roasted nuts from a street vendor. For a moment, even I had to let myself feel it. Not as Harry Potter, boy who lived. Not as the boy who once slept in a cupboard. But as someone stepping into a city of wonders, vast and full of opportunities. Hagrid clapped me on the back, nearly knocking the air out of me. "First stop, Gringotts." I smirked. Already expected as much. The marble hall was as imposing as ever. Goblins lined the counters, eyes sharp, ledgers in constant motion. Hagrid tried to keep up, but I moved with purpose, already scanning for grip hook. Sure enough, he appeared at my side with a sharp bow. "Lord Potter. Snag Rock is awaiting you." Hagrid blinked. "You already?" "Yes," I said smoothly. "We've corresponded. This will be a simple matter of school funds, with a few documents to review." Snag Rock received us in his office, golden spectacles gleaming. He wasted no time. "Trust Vault access has been prepared. Withdrawals authorized for educational supplies. Ledgers of Potter properties and accumulated royalties are here for your perusal." Snag Rock's folio lay open across the desk, its neat columns detailing every Potter property. Godric's Hollow Cottage ruins, uninhabitable. Wales Manor bombarded during Voldemort's war, foundation collapsed, wards shattered. Kent Manor abandoned and vandalized after the Potters fled, stripped of valuables by scavengers. London townhouse magically sealed, but in disrepair. I studied the list, lips curving into a faint smile. So, all the old legacies are dust. Hagrid shifted uncomfortably. "Terrible shame, that is. Should restore 'em, maybe." "No," I said simply, closing the folio. "You don't build empires on ruins. You build new ones." That was so corny. I thought embarrassed. Snag Rock's eyes gleamed with interest. "Spoken like a true heir. Should you wish to construct a stronghold, Goblin Stone Rights and Curse Breakers could assist. For a price." "Not yet," I replied. "But soon. A castle of my own. A legacy untouched by war." The words settled into me like iron. "Not James's. Not Lily's. Mine, I am him." As we left Gringotts, Hagrid mumbled something about needing to pick up something special for Dumbledore. A tiny pouch, handed to him in secret by the goblins. He thought I hadn't noticed. But I saw. The weight, the care with which he tucked it into his coat. The Philosopher's Stone. It had to be. I said nothing aloud. But in my head, the thought pulsed, so it started. A legendary artifact hidden in Hogwarts, an artifact worth more than all the gold in my vaults. And Dumbledore wanted it there, under the noses of children. Either as bait or protection. Perhaps both. I smirked faintly as we turned into the sunlit alley, shoppers bustling around us. Hogwarts wasn't just going to be school. It was going to be a treasure hunt. And I had every intention of winning. My first stop wasn't books or robes. It was trunks. The vendor, an elderly wizard with gold-rimmed spectacles, blinked when I listed my specifications. 1. One main compartment with automatic expansion. 2. A secondary chamber warded for library storage, humidity wards, indexing shelves, anti-theft glyphs. 3. A potion laboratory section, with reinforced shelves, stasis compartments, and self-cleaning charms. 4. A broom vault with cushioning runes, collapsible rack, and weatherproof layering. He sputtered, "That's far more than most Hogwarts first years need." "I'm not most first years," I interrupted, dropping a bag of galleons onto the counter. "Gold, as always," silenced protest. Within an hour, a sleek black trunk with silver inlay was mine, compartments keyed to my magical signature. Hagrid lumbered off toward the cauldron shop, muttering about standard pewter size 2 and dragon hide gloves. I left him to it. I wasn't here for basics. Instead, I stepped into Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Inside, another boy my age stood on a stool, arms out as a seamstress adjusted his sleeves. Pale hair, sharp features, and an air of casual superiority that clung to him like cologne. "Ah, the infamous ferret is here, he even looks like Tom Felton." "Going to Hogwarts too?" he asked as I took the stool beside him. "Yes," I replied smoothly. "Harry Potter." His eyes widened slightly, then he smirked. "Draco Malfoy." We talked as our robes were measured. He asked about houses, ambition dripping from every word. "I'll be in Slytherin." "All the best are." "You don't want to end up with the wrong sort, do you?" I studied him. A child echoing his parents' beliefs, not malicious, just rehearsed. So I answered not with hostility, but with questions. "Tell me, Draco, if pure blood is strength, how do you explain people like Voldemort?" "Half-blood." "Dumbledore?" "Half-blood." "Snape?" "Half-blood." "My mother, a Muggleborn, who mastered charms that most purebloods couldn't touch." His smirk faltered. "That's different." "And bloodlines," I continued, gently, "can wither if not renewed. Take Nymphadora Tonks. Black family descendant. Her mother married a Muggleborn, and Tonks was born a metamorphmagus, a gift the Black family never manifested until then. Isn't that proof that fresh blood can awaken dormant power?" He blinked, thrown off balance. The argument was new to him, not one he'd been fed at home. I softened my tone. "Don't judge others until you know them, Draco. Blood doesn't define worth. Choices do. If you want ambition, cunning, power, those things are made, not inherited." The seamstress tugged the last thread, and I stepped down, my new robes shimmering faintly with enchantments for durability, temperature resistance, and self-repair. Not Aragog silk, just the best quality gold could buy. Practical elegance. Draco was still processing, his brow furrowed. He wasn't convinced. But he was thinking. That was enough. The bell over the door jingled as I stepped into the narrow, dusty shop. Rows of boxes stretched endlessly upward, and the air hummed with latent power. Mr. Ollivander emerged like a ghost, pale eyes wide. "Ah! Harry Potter! I wondered when I'd be seeing you." He set wand after wand in my hand, each failing spectacularly, sparks, shatters, dead silence. But then, finally, he brought a slender wand of holly, 11 inches, with a phoenix feather core. The moment my fingers curled around it, the air shifted. A warmth surged through my arm, magic singing in perfect resonance. Light sparked at the tip, not wild, but steady, controlled. Ollivander leaned close, whispering. Curious. Very curious. For this one's brother gave you that scar. You will be tied together, for better or worse. I exhaled, relief flooding me. So fate still held. The prophecy still worked. My path hadn't been derailed by Rob's intervention. I set the wand down gently. Then this is the one. Ollivander's pale eyes gleamed. Indeed. Back outside, Hagrid beamed. Almost forgot. Got summit fur yet, Harry? He lifted a cage. Inside, a snowy owl blinked at me, feathers pristine white, ember eyes sharp as molten gold. There she is, so kawaii. I thought, seeing Hedwig, ya still gonna choose that name to honor Og. Harry, I'll change her fate. She's beautiful, I murmured, genuine for once. Thought Yeti need a friend, Hagrid said, proud as if he'd raised her himself. Maybe he did. I stroked her feathers gently. She nipped my finger in approval. Then her name is Hedwig. Hagrid also heaved another stack into my arms, textbooks, fresh from Flourish and Blots. All your first-year books. Figured Yeti need 'em. By the time we returned to the Leaky Cauldron, my custom trunk awaited us, gleaming black with silver trim, compartments keyed to my signature. It was more than luggage. It was preparation, foundation, legacy. I ran a hand over its surface and allowed myself the smallest smile. Hogwarts awaited. And I was ready. Hagrid's POV**. Harry Potter wasn't what Hagrid had expected. Dumbledore said he'd been raised by muggles, kept in the dark. Hagrid thought he'd meet a nervous boy, wide-eyed at every bit o' magic. But Harry, he was calm. Too calm, almost. Knew what Gringotts was before Hagrid even opened his mouth, asked sensible questions, no gawping at the goblins. Even bought himself one o' those fancy trunks like an older student might. Didn't seem ungrateful, mind. Polite enough, smiled a bit, but it was controlled. Like he already had one foot in the wizardin world before Hagrid showed up. Made Hagrid uneasy, truth be told. Kids supposed to stare at Diagon Alley like Christmas mornin', not like they're measurin' it with a ruler. Still, when Harry saw that owl, there'd been a spark then. Real, honest excitement. That, at least, was normal. Good lad, Hagrid muttered to himself as they trudged back to the Leaky Cauldron. Just needs time. Bit odd, but a good lad. Draco's POV*. Draco Malfoy prided himself on reading people quickly. Most boys his age were easy, eager to impress, to show off family names, to establish their place. But Potter was confusing. He'd shaken Draco's hand without flinching, even after hearing the name Malfoy. He didn't laugh or sneer when Draco spoke of Slytherin, just listened. Calm, sharp-eyed. And then he'd cut through Draco's words like a knife through parchment. Dumbledore, Snape, even the Dark Lord, all half-bloods. And that cousin Tonks. Potter hadn't shouted, hadn't mocked. He'd said it like it was fact, like he was a teacher correcting a mistake. Draco hated how it rattled him. He wasn't supposed to feel rattled. Father's words were law. Mother's teachings were truth. And yet, Potter's calm voice lingered in his head. People aren't their blood. They're their choices. It didn't sit right. But it didn't sit wrong, either. And that was worse. Draco Malfoy left Madame Malkins with a frown he couldn't quite shake. Okay, no chapter till tomorrow. Chapter 9, Ch9 to Hogwarts yay. For the first time, I lived alone. Not a cupboard, not the cramped second bedroom the Dursleys begrudgingly handed me years ago, but a proper inn-room in the Leaky Cauldron. Modest, yes, but mine. Tom the bartender grinned every time he saw me. Harry Potter, under my roof. Blimey. World's gettin' stranger every day. I only gave him a polite nod. Happy to be your quietest tenant. My days settled into rhythm. Morning's breakfast downstairs, then into Diagon Alley. I'd walk its cobblestones like I'd lived there forever. I treated myself at times, Florian Fortescue's ice cream, a butterbeer at midday. Afternoon's books. Flourish and Blotz practically knew me by name. I tore through sections on arithmancy, runes, alchemy, even advanced charms theory meant for newt students. Knowledge was currency, and I meant to be rich. Evening's training. I didn't need my wand to display strength anymore. I could lift massive weights, stone and steel, whole carts from the alley storage yards, purely on will. The wand wasn't for power, it was for control. So I honed it on precision, levitating 20 quills into synchronized formation, sculpting shields into razor-thin layers, bending charms into new shapes. And when the inn was quiet, I sank inward into a clemency, my mindscape taking shape as a white fortress, halls stretching wider each week. Florian's ice cream became a small indulgence. The man always gave me an extra scoop, muttering something about bright young minds needing sugar. I lingered at quality Quidditch supplies often, staring at the Nimbus 2000 gleaming in the window. The shopkeeper boasted it was the finest broom ever made. He wasn't wrong. And once cloaked, careful I slipped into Nocturne Alley. The air was heavy with whispers, Borgin and Burks crowded with relics humming of dark curses. Dangerous, yes. But knowledge doesn't only live in the light. I filed the location away. I burned Dudley's old rags in the leaky's fireplace. Then I replaced them fitted Muggle clothing from London, shirts and trousers tailored to my frame, shoes that actually fit. From Madame Malkin's, I purchased robes with subtle enchantments, temperature balancing, stain resistance, quick mending. Nothing ostentatious, just functional. For the first time, I dressed like someone who belonged in both worlds. By the end of August, I was sharper, steadier, stronger. Even Tom noticed. Carry yourself like a proper wizard already, lad, he said with a chuckle. I smiled faintly, fingers brushing the holly wand hidden under my sleeve. He wasn't wrong. Hogwarts was next. A/N, I realized in BTW writing there is little to no humor in his inner monologue, so I take my time to get some fun myself. Enjoy, smiley face. The morning of September 1st arrived crisp and cool. My trunk, shrunk to pocket size, sat in my jacket. Hedwig's cage balanced easily in one hand as I slipped into the bustle of King's Cross Station. Muggles streamed around me, shoulders brushing, chatter echoing beneath the great iron arches. Normal people. Unaware of the world they brushed against. Platforms 9 and 10 loomed ahead. I didn't need anyone to guide me, the faint shimmer of wards curled across the barrier like sunlight on water. Easy enough. I leaned casually against a column, pretending to adjust Hedwig's cage, and watched. A family bustled past, red-haired, freckled, chattering. I noted the way the older boys pushed their trolley straight into the wall without hesitation, disappearing clean through. The Weasleys, no doubt. Subtle as a stampede, I muttered with a smirk. When no one was looking, I stepped forward. The barrier accepted me instantly, a gentle tug in my chest, and then I emerged into steam and scarlet. It was magnificent. A gleaming red train, billowing smoke that drifted across the platform. Owls hooted from cages, cats darted between trunks, parents hugged children tight before sending them off. For the first time in this life, I stood among my peers. Not above them, not beneath them. Among them. I adjusted Hedwig's cage, my wand humming faintly in its holster, and let the noise of the platform wash over me. This was it. The start of the stage Dumbledore had built. The stage where Voldemort's shadow lingered. The stage where I would play. I boarded the train, calm and collected. The Hogwarts Express was already humming with chatter, compartments filling up fast. Kids leaned out of windows to wave goodbye, parents fussed over ties and cloaks. I slipped down the aisle, scanning. Too loud. Too crowded. Too much sugar rush energy bouncing off the walls. I wasn't here to play babysitter. An empty compartment at the far end of the carriage caught my eye. Jackpot. I slid the door shut behind me, set Hedwig's cage down, and let out a breath. Finally. Peace. I flopped onto the seat, smirk tugging at my lips. Okay, main character energy secured. Cue the opening credits. For a moment, I just stared out the window at the steam curling along the platform. Wild, isn't it? 1 month ago I was still stuck at Privet Drive, gaslighting the Dursleys into tolerating me. Now I'm on a magic train heading to a castle to learn how to legally commit arson. Peak career progression. Hedwig gave me a reproachful hoot. I raised an eyebrow. What? Too soon? She clicked her beak. Fine. Note to self, Owl disapproves of casual dark humor. The door rattled. Footsteps. Voices in the corridor. And just like that, the piece was about to end. I straightened my posture, school perfect, expression calm. Mask on. Time to meet the cast. The door slid open. A lanky redhead peeked in, ears pink. Mind if I sit here? Everywhere else is full. Classic canon moment. I gestured to the seat opposite. Go ahead. Long as you don't snore. Ron chuckled nervously and dropped into the seat, setting down a battered trunk. His stomach growled loud enough to rattle the glass. I raised an eyebrow. You brought your appetite but forgot the food, huh? Yeah, Ron admitted sheepishly. Mum packed sandwiches but Fred and George nicked 'em. I'll just wait for the trolley. Bros running on DLC trial mode, I muttered under my breath, then smiled. Don't worry. I'll spot you a chocolate frog later. Consider it an investment. Ron blinked. Thanks, mate. 3 minutes later asterisk. Not long after, the door slid open again. A bushy-haired girl stuck her head in, holding a spellbook. Have either of you seen a toad? Neville's lost one. I shook my head. No amphibians here. Just one hungry redhead. Ron scowled. Oi! She ignored him, her sharp eyes locking on me. Are you Harry Potter? Depends, I said smoothly. If you're here to quiz me on trivia, maybe I'm just Gary Snotter. Her mouth fell open, then shut with an audible click. You're Harry Potter. Allegedly. She huffed, muttered something about boys and their jokes, and disappeared. Ron leaned over. She's mental. I smirked. And she'll probably save both our lives someday. Respect the grind, Weasley. After a while, I excused myself. Stretching my legs. Don't eat Hedwig while I'm gone. Ron blinked. What? I slid the door shut before he could respond. The corridor of the train buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the smell of too many snacks. I strolled through it like a scout in hostile territory, cataloging faces, names, alliances in the making. Draco Malfoy held court like a pint-sized aristocrat. Pansy Parkinson hung on his every word, Theo Not listened quietly, Blaise Zabinai watched with detached amusement, while Crabbe and Goyle loomed like confused furniture. And Father says, once I'm in Slytherin, I'll be well on the path to Draco broke off when he noticed me. His expression flickered, then smoothed into practiced politeness. Potter. Malfoy, I said, inclining my head. Nice entourage. Do you rent them by the hour, or are they subscription-based? Blaise actually snorted. Theo smirked. Pansy frowned. Crabbe and Goyle blinked, as though waiting for instructions. Draco flushed but forced a laugh. You'll find it pays to have loyal friends, he said stiffly. Agreed, I said easily. The loyalty's earned, not bought. You'll see. I left him stewing on that, Blaze's curious gaze following me. Note to self, Not and Zabanai, keep tabs. They're thinkers, not sheep. A few compartments down, I found 4 girls sharing one space. Daphne Greengrass and Tracy Davis sat together, composed but observant. Opposite them were the Paddle twins, already gossiping and laughing. Beside them sat Lily Moon, a quiet girl with a thoughtful gaze. The room hushed as I slid the door open. Sorry to interrupt, I said, smiling faintly. Just stretching my legs. You're Harry Potter, Tracy blurted before Daphne elbowed her. So they keep telling me, I said dryly. Personally, I was hoping for something more original. Like guy with messy hair and trauma. The twins laughed. Lily's lips twitched. Even Daphne's composure cracked a little. I leaned against the door frame. Enjoying the circus outside? Loud kids tripping over themselves to impress strangers. Daphne tilted her head. And what are you doing? Scouting, I said simply. While everyone else is shouting about houses and family names, I'm watching. Taking notes. The way Daphne's eyes sharpened told me she understood. The Paddles exchanged intrigued looks. Lily simply studied me, like she was filing me away for later. See you around, I said, giving them a small nod before slipping back into the corridor. Note to self, that compartment's full of thinkers. Worth keeping an eye on. Closer to the front, Cedric Diggory was chatting with Fred and George Weasley. Oi, look who it is, one twin called. The boy who lived in 3D, the other added. Cedric grinned, extending a hand. Cedric Diggory. Pleasure to meet you, Harry. Likewise, I said, shaking it firmly. The twins bombarded me with jokes, Cedric with polite questions. I matched their energy, just enough to be memorable without overcommitting. When I excused myself, Fred called, Don't worry, Potter, we'll make sure you have a legendary first year. Define legendary, I muttered under my breath as I walked away. By the time I slid back into my own compartment, Ron had turned the seat into a battlefield of wrappers and crumbs. Trolley came, he mumbled around a mouthful. Got you some too. I raised a pumpkin pasty in salute. Good man. Keep this up and you'll unlock best friend perks. Ron blinked. Hey. Don't worry about it. The train rattled on, steam hissing. Hogwarts grew closer with every mile. The train screeched to a halt at Hogsmeade Station. Steam hissed around us like some dramatic stage cue. Kids poured out in a rush, chattering, dragging trunks, tripping over owl cages. First years over here. There he was, Hagrid, looming in the mist, lantern swinging. His voice rolled over the crowd like a foghorn. Ron leaned close. Blimey, he's huge. I deadpanned, really? I thought it was just the perspective. Ron snorted. A few nearby kids blinked, trying to tell if I was joking. Good. Keep them off balance. We followed Hagrid down a path to the lake, where small boats bobbed gently at the shore. 4 to a boat. Naturally, Ron and I ended up together, joined by Neville, still fretting about his toad, and Hermione, already lecturing Neville about better animal-keeping practices. Don't worry Abu the toad, Neville, Hagrid called. If it's at Hogwarts, we'll find it. I leaned toward Ron. Plot twist, the toad's the final boss. Ron nearly choked trying not to laugh. Hermione gave me the look, the one that said she was already considering writing my name in a report. The boats drifted silently across the black water. Mist curled around us, and then there it was. Hogwarts. The castle loomed above, towers and turrets lit with golden fire, reflected in the lake below like a crown of light. It was breathtaking, overwhelming, the kind of view designed to silence even the loudest child. Everyone gasped. Some pointed. Some whispered. I just smirked. Yab. DLC unlocked. Welcome to Hogwarts, Extended Edition. Still, even I couldn't deny the sight made something stir in me. Not awe, exactly. More like recognition. This was the stage. The place where every piece would fall into play. Ron leaned forward, eyes wide. Wicked. Hermione whispered, it's beautiful. Neville muttered, hope my toad's here. And me? I just leaned back, hands folded behind my head, eyes fixed on the castle. Home sweet home, I murmured. The boats bumped softly against the far shore. We scrambled out, following Hagrid up a winding path and into a set of massive oak doors. Inside, we were met by a stern-looking witch in emerald robes. McGonagall, of course. The room fell silent at her presence. Welcome to Hogwarts, she said crisply. In a moment, you will be sorted into your houses. Your house will be your family at Hogwarts. I tuned out the speech halfway through. Yeah, houses, family, rivalries, legacy, yada yada. Translation, multiplayer teams with way too much friendly fire. We were herded into a small stone chamber. Kids whispered nervously, tugging at sleeves, bouncing on heels. Ron leaned over. Do you think they'll make us fight a troll or something? I raised an eyebrow. If they do, dibs on using you as bait. Ron spluttered. Hermione gasped. Neville looked like he might faint. I smiled faintly. Mission accomplished, lighten the tension, but keep everyone guessing about how serious I was. Then the doors opened. The great hall was breathtaking, long tables glowing with candlelight, the enchanted ceiling a perfect mirror of the starry night sky. Hundreds of students turned to stare as we filed in. 4 tables, 4 houses, 4 very different vibes. Gryffindor, loud, rowdy, a sea of red and gold scarves already shouting encouragement. Ah yes, the YOLO crowd. Hufflepuff, warm, smiling, polite claps and waves. Basically Hogwarts emotional support squad. Ravenclaw, quiet, curious, quills already scratching mid-sorting. Homework in 4K resolution. Slytherin, cool, composed, eyes sharp as blades. Applause measured, precise. DLC, Snake Edition. I let my gaze sweep over each table, filing details away. Gryffindor had heart, Slytherin had ambition, Ravenclaw had brains, Hufflepuff had loyalty. Useful traits. Dangerous in the wrong hands. And here I was, the wild card, about to be sorted. The sorting hat waited on its stool, brim curling like it was already smirking at me. All right then, I thought, stepping forward. Let's see if you're ready for DLC content. You thought I was done? Muhahaha. Okay, but seriously is not gonna be this time every single day. I just emptied my stock of CH for you guys. It's done for today. I promise, I don't. Enjoy. 911p2. Chapter 10, CH10 Bros Sorted. We lined up in front of the stool like cattle about to be auctioned. McGonagall held a long roll of parchment and began reading names. The first girl, Abbot Hannah, stumbled forward, face pink, and plopped the hat on her head. Hufflepuff, it boomed. The table in yellow erupted into cheers. I smirked. Good kid. She'll probably own a cat cafe by 30. Next came a boy, Boot Terry. The hat barely touched his hair before yelling Ravenclaw. Figures, I muttered. He already looks like he was born with a library card. A few more went by, Susan Bones to Hufflepuff, Mandy Brocklehurst to Ravenclaw, Millicent Bulstrode to Slytherin. Each time, the appropriate table clapped politely or rowdily. Ron whispered nervously beside me, "What if it doesn't pick me at all?" I muttered back, "Then you unlock spectator mode." He frowned. "What?" "Nothing." I scanned the 4 tables as more names were called. Hufflepuff welcomed every student with open arms, cheering as though they'd won the lottery. Heartwarming, and slightly cultish. Ravenclaw barely looked up from their parchment, already judging who was worth tutoring with. Gryffindor clapped loud enough to rattle the windows. "Yep, adrenaline junkies confirmed." Slytherin smiled coolly whenever one of theirs joined. Applause precise, like they were tallying numbers on a scoreboard. Each house a different battlefield. Each table its own weapon. Then Granger, Hermione. Bushy-haired girl marched up, chin high. The hat took its time, then shouted, "Gryffindor." The red and gold table cheered. She smiled proudly, though I swore she looked like she'd been hoping for Ravenclaw. Next, Longbottom, Neville. Neville nearly tripped on his robes. The hat sat on his head longer than expected before finally calling, "Gryffindor." I smirked faintly. Brave isn't the absence of fear. It's falling on your face and still getting up. Potter, Harry. The room froze. A ripple of whispers shot through the hall. Heads craned. Fingers pointed at my scar. I kept my face calm, steps steady, though inside my thoughts ran hot. "All right, hat. Let's dance." The hat dropped over my eyes, and the hall disappeared. The moment the hat settled over my head, a voice hummed inside my skull. "Ah! Harry Potter. Or perhaps, not entirely Harry Potter, You're interesting. Very interesting." "Thanks," I thought dryly. "Do you offer a loyalty card for that compliment, or is it one-time use?" The hat chuckled. "Wit and irreverence, a Ravenclaw trait, perhaps." "Yes, I see hunger for knowledge, the sharp mind of a scholar. You could go far in Ravenclaw, child." I considered it. Not a bad option. But knowledge alone doesn't win wars. And I'm not here to just study runes until my beard turns white. "Ah," the hat murmured. "Then Slytherin, yes, cunning, ambition, resourcefulness. You'd do well there. You have a hunger for control, for building something of your own. In Slytherin, you could make alliances, seize power, become a leader, a king. Tempting. Very tempting. But you're hesitating," the hat pressed. "Why? You'd fit well, you know it." "Because," I countered, "I know the future. I know how people will see me. The boy who lived in Slytherin? It would warp everything. Too much attention, too much paranoia. I need freedom to move, not constant suspicion breathing down my neck." The hat hummed. "Practical. Very practical. But Gryffindor, you have bravery, too. Recklessness hidden under all that control. You long for challenge, for the thrill of risk." "Yes. Gryffindor could shape you, test you, temper you. And," I added, "it keeps the timeline intact. Canon still works. Voldemort expects me there. Dumbledore expects me there. It's the best mask to wear." The hat laughed. "Mask, indeed. Oh, you are sly. Slytherin cunning, Ravenclaw wit, Hufflepuff loyalty buried deep, and Gryffindor's courage at your core. You could belong to any house." "Then put me in Gryffindor," I said firmly. "It's where I'll shine without drawing the wrong kind of spotlight." The hat seemed almost pleased. "Very well then. You would have done well in Ravenclaw. You could have been great in Slytherin. But if it's Gryffindor you want..." The hat shouted into the hall, "Gryffindor!" The roar of the table drowned out everything else. Cheers, applause, shouts of "We got Potter!" echoed against the enchanted ceiling. I pulled the hat off, smirk faintly tugging at my lips, and walked toward the sea of red and gold. Mask secured, I thought. Let the game begin. The sorting finished, and McGonagall rolled up her parchment. Dumbledore rose, arms spread wide, eyes twinkling like a man who'd replaced his blood with sherbet lemons. Welcome, he boomed. Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, a few words, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. The hall erupted into laughter. I just raised an eyebrow. Bold move. My man just shouted 4 random words like he's streaming on Twitch and still got a standing ovation. That's power. Then the food appeared. And by food, I mean a banquet that could put entire kingdoms to shame. Roast chicken, sausages, pies, puddings, mashed potatoes in bowls the size of bathtubs. Ron nearly fell into the table trying to grab everything at once. I served myself calmly. Note to self, don't eat like you were raised in a cupboard. Wait, right, I wasn't in this timeline. Still counts. Hey, Potter, right. I looked up to see a sandy-haired boy grinning. Seamus Finnegan. I'm half Irish, half explosive. Nice to meet you. Harry, I said, shaking his hand. Please don't blow up the mashed potatoes. Across the table, a boy with dark skin and sharp eyes leaned in. Dean Thomas. Big football fan. You. Quidditch, I replied. It's basically football with more ways to die. Dean laughed. Fair enough. A tall, pompous-looking older boy cleared his throat. Percy Weasley, Prefect. If you need guidance. Don't worry, I interrupted smoothly. If I break rules, I'll make sure to do it out of your line of sight. Seamus snorted. Percy frowned. Victory. A transparent figure floated down the table. Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington, nearly headless Nick himself. Ah, new Gryffindors, he declared proudly. Welcome, welcome. You'll find no finer house, I assure you. Nearly headless? Seamus asked. Nearly. Ron echoed. Nick launched into his usual spiel, demonstrating with a gruesome tug of his head. Gasps, laughter, disgust. I calmly nodded. Impressive. Do you also do party tricks? Nick blinked, then chuckled. You've spirit, young Potter. I like you. Between bites, I studied the professors. Dumbledore sat like a kindly old general pretending he wasn't terrifying. His twinkle wasn't fooling me. I knew he saw everything. McGonagall was ramrod straight, expression sharp enough to cut stone. Stern, but protective. A good ally if earned. Flitwick nearly vanished behind his goblet, but I caught the gleam in his eyes. Underestimate him at your peril. Sprout looked like she'd just come in from gardening, hands still faintly dirt-stained. Practical, grounded, solid. Snape, Snape. Glowering like he'd bitten a lemon soaked in vinegar, eyes fixed on me with unfiltered loathing. Yab. Man's got tragic backstory tattooed on his forehead. Quirrell twitched and stammered, turban wound tightly around his head. My eyes lingered just long enough. Hello, Voldy. Hope you're enjoying your Airbnb experience. Hagrid beamed proudly at the end of the table, clapping loud enough to rattle dishes. Big heart, bigger fists. Reliable. I smirked faintly to myself. Pieces on the board, clear as day. Desserts materialized next, treacle tart, chocolate eclairs, ice cream. I helped myself to tart while Ron nearly drowned in pudding. As the feast wound down and Dumbledore gave his final announcements, Forbidden Forest, no magic in corridors, Filch glaring like a wannabe Dark Lord, I leaned back, satisfied. First dinner complete. Allies sampled. Enemies noted. Game officially on. The Gryffindors followed Percy Weasley through winding corridors and up staircases that seemed to move whenever they felt like it. "Keep up!" Percy barked, puffing his chest like a drill sergeant. Seamus muttered, "Blimey, does he swallow a rulebook every morning?" I deadpanned, "Yes," and then quotes it back up later. Seamus nearly tripped laughing. Percy ignored us, but I could practically see the steam rising off his ears. We stopped before a portrait of a fat lady in pink silk. "Password?" she demanded. "Caput Draconis," Percy announced. The portrait swung forward, revealing a round hole. Inside was the Gryffindor common room, warm, cozy, glowing with firelight. Plush armchairs scattered near the hearth, tapestries of lions on the walls, the whole place buzzing with the energy of kids who weren't ready to sleep yet. Ron let out a low whistle. "Brilliant." "Not bad," I admitted silently. "Like a cross between a hunting lodge and a grandmother's sitting room." Percy herded us up another flight of stairs to the boys' dorm. 5 four-poster beds with deep red curtains stood in a circle, trunks already at the foot of each. Seamus threw himself onto one. "Called it." Dean Thomas stretched out on another, pulling out a West Ham poster and grinning at it like it was sacred scripture. Neville fussed with his trunk, still muttering about his missing toad. Ron collapsed onto his bed dramatically. "This is miles better than home." I sat on my bed calmly, running a hand along the scarlet blanket. "All right. This is base camp. From here, we conquer." Seamus perked up. "So, Harry, you know who to him? As a baby?" Dean elbowed him. "Don't ask him that the first night, mate." I smiled faintly. "Honestly? I don't remember it. If I did, I'd charge tickets to the memory." They laughed. Even Neville managed a weak chuckle. Ron grinned at me across the room. "Told you he's all right." I leaned back against the headboard, listening to their chatter. They were kids, loud, awkward, full of questions. And me? I was the infiltrator, the chess player, the transmigrator with cheat codes hidden in his mind. But for tonight, I just let the firelight flicker across the curtains and allowed myself to relax. Day 1, successful. Mask secure. Next round starts tomorrow. With that, I drew the curtains closed and drifted off, the castle whispering faintly around me. Your favorite VTube coughs ready, I mean Fav. Author is back. Tell me what you think in comments. Also drop some power stones from coming Monday. CA. 911p2. Chapter 11, Ch11 Potter on show. Morning at Hogwarts had its own rhythm. Bells tolling, chatter echoing through stone halls, the smell of roasted bread and bacon luring half-asleep students toward the Great Hall. I joined the Gryffindor table, slipping between Ron and Dean. Trays of toast, eggs, porridge, pumpkin juice, and bacon shimmered into existence, and the hall erupted into clattering cutlery. Ron attacked the food like he'd been starved for years. Seamus was already telling a loud story about his cousin turning a teapot into a donkey. Neville quietly spread jam on toast, eyes still droopy. I helped myself to porridge and an apple. Rule 1 of survival, don't let food control you. Rule 2, never trust castle porridge without tasting first. Professor McGonagall appeared like a summoned spirit, her emerald robes crisp as ever, arms full of parchment. Timetables, she said briskly, handing them out down the line. Today, double transfiguration for Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs, followed by charms. Potions with the Slytherins tomorrow. She reached me, eyes sharp but not unkind. Mr. Potter. I trust you are prepared to take your studies seriously. Yes, Professor, I said smoothly. Her eyes lingered a fraction longer, like she was testing for cracks, then she moved on. Ron groaned, reading his parchment. Double transfiguration first thing? She's terrifying. Or she's the type who respects competence, I said, sipping pumpkin juice. So maybe don't mess up. Ron gave me a betrayed look. Between bites, I scanned the staff table again. Dumbledore chatted idly with Flitwick, but his eyes twinkled toward the students like he was watching 10 chessboards at once. Snape stared at his porridge as if it had personally wronged him. Quirrell stuttered through a conversation with Sprout, turban twitching oddly. "Yeah, Voldy. Still see you in there." Hagrid waved cheerfully when he noticed me watching. I lifted my goblet in return. The other students only saw professors. I saw pieces. Allies, rivals, obstacles. As bell rang through the hall, echoing off the high ceiling. Benches scraped, chatter rose, and first years fumbled with bags and schedules. Dean groaned. "Here we go. Day 1. I smirked faintly. Day 1 of classes. Day 2 of the game. We filed out of the hall, heading toward our first lesson. The Gryffindors and Hufflepuffs filed into the Transfiguration classroom, chatter echoing under the high, vaulted ceiling. Desks were neat rows, sunlight streaming across blackboards filled with diagrams of arrows turning into goblets. At the front sat a plain desk, unassuming. On it perched a tabby cat, tail twitching lazily. Ron leaned over. "Brilliant. First lesson in its pet day." I arched an eyebrow. "Patience, Weasley." The cat's eyes gleamed unnaturally sharp. I already knew who it was. Sure enough, the cat leapt gracefully from the desk, and morphed midair into Professor McGonagall. Her robe snapped into place as she straightened, expression cool and proud. A few students gasped. Someone even clapped. Ron whispered, "Bloody hell!" "Animagus," I murmured. "One of the hardest transformations in the book." I thought. McGonagall's gaze swept the room. Transfiguration is one of the most complex and dangerous branches of magic you will learn at Hogwarts. Anyone caught using it for mischief will be leaving this class immediately. She flicked her wand. "We begin simply. A matchstick." Little boxes of matchsticks appeared on each desk. "Your task, transform it into a needle. Precision is everything." Groans rippled through the room. Half the students expected fireworks, not needlecraft. I twirled the matchstick between my fingers. "All right, precision training. Let's see how sharp I can make this without breaking cover." I whispered the incantation, focused my will, and tapped. The wood shimmered, rippling metallic. Within seconds, a perfect steel needle lay on my desk. But around me, results were varied. Ron's matchstick had sprouted a bent, silver tip. Neville's caught fire. Seamus's exploded. Hermione's was already halfway to success, gleaming dull metal but still faintly wooden. I leaned back casually, inspecting my flawless needle like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her heels clicked as she walked down the aisles, examining work. She stopped at my desk. One eyebrow arched. She picked up the needle, turned it in her fingers, then gave me a sharp look. "Mr. Potter, most impressive." "Thank you, Professor," I said smoothly, keeping my face calm while Ron gawked at me like I'd just pulled gold out of thin air. McGonagall gave the tiniest nod, then moved on. Hermione glanced over, eyes wide, then narrowed in determination. Good. Competition fuels progress. By the end of class, most students had a bent or half-changed object. My needle remained perfect. I slipped it into my pocket. Souvenir. Proof of control. As we packed up, Ron muttered, "How'd you do that?" "First try." I smirked. "Trade secret. Maybe I'll start a tutoring business. First lesson's free, second one costs chocolate frogs." Ron groaned. "Unfair." "Life's unfair," I replied, and walked out into the corridor. After Transfiguration, Gryffindors shuffled into Charms. The room was lined with bookshelves stacked with volumes that looked older than the castle itself. In the center stood Professor Flitwick, tiny, cheerful, with an energy that filled the space like fireworks. "Good morning," he squeaked, climbing onto a pile of cushions behind his desk. "Welcome to Charms. This, my young friends, is where you'll learn spells that will change your lives forever. Light, levitation, fire, water, it all begins here." He raised his wand with theatrical flair. "And we shall start with one of the simplest yet most essential charms. Lumos." A warm beam of white light bloomed at his wand tip. Then he flicked it. Knocks. The light vanished. We each got a turn. Ron's wand sparked faintly, then fizzled. "Lumos," he barked. His wand sputtered like a dying flashlight. Hermione's hand shot up even before her wand was out. "Professor, I read about channeling magical focus through the wrist." Flitwick beamed. "Excellent preparation, Miss Granger. Do try." Hermione whispered Lumos and her wand glowed faintly, like a candle stub. She beamed. "My turn." I breathed steady, narrowed my focus, and murmured. "Lumos." The light flared instantly, not a candle glow, but a clean, sharp beam, bright enough to cast clear shadows across the room. A few students gasped. I twirled the wand lazily, writing my initials in light against the wall before extinguishing it with a casual knocks. Flitwick squeaked so loudly he nearly toppled off his stack of books. "Marvelous, Mr. Potter. Excellent control of focus. 5 points to Gryffindor." Hermione pursed her lips, already planning to outdo me next round. Ron muttered, "Show off." I smirked faintly. Correction, competent. By the end of class, most wands glowed faintly. A few, Seamus's, predictably, sparked dangerously. As we filed out, Dean grinned at me. "You make that look easy." I shrugged. "Everything's easy when you don't overthink it. And when you've already mastered wandless light years ago," I added silently. The bell rang, leading us straight into lunch. The great hall buzzed at midday, filled with clatter and chatter. Platters of roast chicken, bread rolls, and pumpkin juice shimmered onto the tables. I slid into my seat between Ron and Seamus, piling some food onto my plate. Conversation was lively. Seamus describing an uncle's failed broom enchantment, Hermione furiously reading her timetable even as she chewed. Then the ferret came. Draco Malfoy, flanked as always by Crabbe and Goyle, stood smugly at the edge of the Gryffindor table. His chin was high, his smirk freshly polished. Ferret energy bouncing from him. "Well, Potter," Draco drawled. "I remember our last little chat. You had your clever words about half-bloods and all that, but you ignored something important. Family magic. Bloodline abilities. Things Muggleborns will never have." He leaned in, pale eyes gleaming. "A Malfoy can trace his line back centuries. We have magic spread into us. Do you really think someone born from nothing can compare?" The Gryffindors bristled. Ron started to rise again, but I raised a hand, eyes locked on Draco. "Bloodline abilities," I echoed. "Useful, yes. Impressive, even. But tell me this, Malfoy." I set down my fork deliberately. "What happens when the same dozen families intermarry for centuries? What happens when the gene pool shrinks so small it circles the drain?" Draco's smirk faltered slightly. "Stagnation. Weakness. The Black family itself is proof. Centuries of inbreeding left them unstable. Brilliant here, mad there. Do you think that's strength? Or rot?" I let the words hang before continuing, quieter, sharper. "Without new blood, old blood withers. Without fresh air, noble houses suffocate. You can't keep cutting from the same cloth and expect it to stay whole." A hush fell around us. Gryffindors leaned in. Even some Ravenclaws at the next table glanced over. Draco opened his mouth, closed it, then forced out, "You don't understand." I tilted my head. "I understand perfectly. Tradition matters. Bloodlines matter. But without change, tradition becomes a coffin. You want your house to thrive? Stop looking down on the very people who might save it." Draco's pale face flushed. He turned sharply, stalking off with Crabbe and Goyle in tow, the echo of my words trailing behind him. Ron gaped. "That was wicked, mate." Seamus snorted. "Or a talent for picking fights and winning them." I calmly speared a piece of roast chicken. "I'm not picking fights. I'm educating." Hermione muttered, educating with insults, but I caught the faintest glimmer of approval in her eyes. The chatter of the hall resumed, but glances still flicked toward me from all sides. Some curious. Some wary. A few, impressed. Exactly as planned. The Gryffindor common room was quieter than usual in the late afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, turning the scarlet drapes gold. Most first years were either napping or nervously rereading their schedules. I sat by the fire with a book from the library, Magical Theory by Adalbert Waffling. Not because I needed it, but because the image mattered. Appear studious, unassuming. Let them underestimate you. From the corner of my eye, I caught whispers. Seamus, Dean, even a few older Gryffindors sneaking glances at me. Half awe, half curiosity. Malfoy's challenge spread faster than fire in dry grass. Good. Let them talk. Reputation was a currency. Some people spent it recklessly. I intended to invest mine. Step 1, competence in class. Done. Step 2, stand your ground against snakelets. Done. Step 3, establish myself as someone who sees the game differently. I turned a page lazily. So far, so good. Now comes step 4, don't get caught underestimating the staff. Especially Snape. Because unlike Malfoy, Snape wouldn't just argue with words. He'd use poison, potions, pressure. And he already hated me on sight. I closed the book. Time to sharpen the mask. A/N. Okay, I'll stop speed running chapters now. Comment your thought, but do comment anything, just do it. I'll love some thoughts and theories of yours. Sayonara. 911p2. Chapter 12, Ch12 Flying to Flex. The potions classroom lay deep in the dungeons, cool and damp. Shelves lined with jars of disturbing things, pickled lizards, floating organs, something with too many eyes, cast faint glimmers under torchlight. We Gryffindors sat with Slytherins at shared benches. Ron dropped beside me, muttering, "Hope he's not as bad as Charlie says." I gave him a look. Spoiler, he's worse. The door banged open. Severus Snape swept in, robes billowing like storm clouds. His dark eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on me, they sharpened to knives. "There will be no foolish wand-waving or silly incantations in this class," Snape drawled. "As such, I do not expect you to truly appreciate the subtle science and exact art that is potion-making." He prowled between desks, voice soft but cutting. "I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stopper death if you are not, as I fear, a bunch of dunderheads." Quills scratched nervously. Then his gaze snapped back to me. "Potter. Tell me, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" I met his stare evenly. "The draught of living death, sir. A powerful sleeping potion. Though it's lethal if brewed incorrectly." A ripple of whispers broke out. Snape's lips twitched, not in approval but irritation. He had expected me to fail. He stalked closer. "Very well. Let's try again. Where would you look if I asked you to find me a bezoar?" "In the stomach of a goat," I replied smoothly. It's an antidote to most poisons. More whispers. Ron gawked at me. Snape's voice dropped to a hiss. And what is the difference, Potter, between monk's hood and wolfsbane? I tilted my head. None, sir. They're the same plant, also called aconite. Snape's eyes narrowed. His jaw clenched. Clearly, fame isn't everything. He swept to the front. Let us see if you can bottle competence when it matters. Today, we brew the cure for boils. Cauldrons bubbled to life. Ingredients clattered. Steam filled the dungeon air. I worked methodically, cutting nettles with precise strokes, adding crushed snake fangs at exactly the right angle to avoid clumping. Beside me, Neville fumbled with his cauldron, sweat dripping down his forehead. His potion hissed dangerously, turning a shade too green. Harry, he stammered. I glanced over. If he adds the porcupine quills now, it'll explode. Neville, stop, I said sharply. I flicked my wand under the table, siphoning out a portion of the overheated liquid before it boiled over. Then I added a stabilizing pinch of dried nettle to neutralize the acid reaction. The cauldron settled, bubbling weakly instead of exploding. Neville blinked at me, wide-eyed. Thanks. Focus on stirring counterclockwise, I murmured, and don't let it simmer too long. Snape swept down the aisle, black eyes sharp. He paused at Neville's desk. His lip curled. Barely passable, he sneered. Then his gaze flicked to me. Helping Longbottom, Potter? How noble! But if you're going to play hero, at least keep your own potion from looking too perfect. I glanced at my cauldron, potion gleaming textbook purple. Snape's nostrils flared. He scribbled something violently on his parchment and stalked away. Ron leaned over, whispering, "Blimey, mate. You saved Neville's potion and still did better than anyone else." "Don't tell anyone," I said, smirking faintly. "It'll ruin my reputation for mischief." By the end of class, most cauldrons had produced nothing but foul sludge. Mine was bottled neatly, corked, and labeled. Snape dismissed us with his usual venom. His glare lingered on me like a promise. I slipped out of the dungeon with Ron and Hermione, feeling the weight of whispers behind me. Gryffindor's impressed. Slytherin's wary. Snape furious. Good. Let them talk. Candles flickered against shelves stacked with ancient books. The soft ticking of silver instruments filled the air as Albus Dumbledore leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Hagrid sat across from him, rambling warmly. "He's a good lad, Professor. Polite, sharper than a whip too. And well, I reckon he's a bit different." "Different?" Dumbledore asked mildly, blue eyes glimmering. "Not in a bad way, o' course. Just he's not shy, not lost like I thought he'd be. Talks smart. Acts smart. Like he's got a plan every minute." Hagrid scratched his beard nervously. "Don't reckon that's bad, but it's somethin'. Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully, stroking his beard. "Yes. Not the boy I expected either." Later, Minerva McGonagall entered, robes swishing, lips pursed in that familiar line. "Albus," she began, "I've seen remarkable skill before, but never from an 11-year-old on his first day." Potter transfigured a matchstick into a perfect needle. Perfect. No hesitation, no fumbling. And in Charms Flitwick tells me his Lumos was beyond anything he's seen at that level. She hesitated, then sighed. I expected another James. Bold, reckless, charming. Instead, I find someone quiet. Watchful. Calculating. He is, not what I thought. Not James, Dumbledore murmured softly. Nor Lily. But Harry still. McGonagall's stern expression flickered, almost softening. Yes. But a Harry who feels older than his years. The door banged open. Severus Snape swept in like a thundercloud. Albus. He is arrogant, insolent, and clearly thinks himself above reproach. Dumbledore's lips twitched faintly. You speak of Mr. Potter, I assume. Of course I do. Snape snapped. He parroted textbook answers in my class as though reciting poetry, all while smirking like his father. He even helped Longbottom avoid disaster, purely for attention, no doubt. McGonagall frowned. He saved the boy's potion, Severus. That's hardly arrogance. Snape sneered. He seeks to be admired. To play the hero. Just like James. Dumbledore regarded him steadily. Or perhaps he is simply capable, Severus. You must not let old grudges blind you to what is new. Snape's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. When the room emptied, Dumbledore remained, staring into the flickering fire. Not James. Not Lily. Something else. A child shaped by suffering, yet sharpened rather than broken. Clever beyond his years. Bold, but not reckless. Calculating, but not cruel. He tapped a finger against the arm of his chair. And already shifting the currents around him. Slytherins unsettled. Gryffindor impressed. Even Severus rattled. The headmaster leaned back, eyes narrowing behind his half-moon spectacles. Harry Potter, he murmured. You may surprise us all. A week into Hogwarts life, the rhythm had settled in, classes, homework, library runs, the occasional prank war brewing between Gryffindor and Slytherin. But today, the timetable had something new, flying lessons. By mid-morning, Gryffindors and Slytherins gathered on the grassy training field, brooms laid out in neat rows. The autumn air was crisp, the castle looming in the distance like a watchful giant. Ron eyed his broom like it was a sleeping dragon. Dad said they've not been serviced in decades. Probably fly worse than a clean sweep. I smirked. Then don't crash. Gravity's undefeated. Madame Hooch strode in, short grey hair spiked like steel, eyes golden and sharp as a hawk's. She blew a whistle so sharp Neville nearly dropped his broom already. Welcome. I am Madame Hooch, and I will be teaching you the basics of flight. Do not forget, a broom is not a toy. Treat it with respect, or you'll end up in the hospital wing faster than you can say Quidditch foul. She clapped. Now, everyone, place your right hand over your broom and say, up. The field erupted with shouts of up. Brooms twitched, rolled, or lay stubbornly still. Neville's broom flipped and smacked him in the face. Ron spun half-heartedly before wobbling to his hand. Mine? Up, I said calmly. The broom snapped into my palm instantly, sharp and precise, as though it recognized me. Slytherins glanced over. Malfoy's brow twitched. Potter blood prevails. Madame Hooch's golden eyes gleamed. Very good, Mr. Potter. Now, mount your brooms. Kick off hard, hover a few feet, and come back down on my whistle. The air filled with nervous muttering. Neville wobbled before his feet even left the ground. On the whistle, I kicked off smoothly. The broom rose like silk, the wind rushing cool against my face. I hovered steady, barely shifting, while half the class wobbled like drunks on stilts. I guided the broom in a neat circle before settling back down. My landing was silent, precise. Ron gawked. Bloody hell, Harry, it's like you've flown before. I smirked faintly. Natural talent. Or maybe I read the manual. Of course, no first flying lesson is complete without disaster. Neville, pale as milk, lost control of his broom. It jerked, shot upward, then dipped wildly. Mr. Longbottom, pull up, pull up. Madame Hooch shouted, sprinting forward. But Neville panicked. His broom bucked, tossing him off. He fell hard, rolling across the grass with a yelp. The broom clattered off toward the castle, riderless. Broken wrist, Madame Hooch muttered, helping Neville up. Off to the hospital wing. The rest of you stay put, do not move until I return. She marched Neville off, broom dragging behind her. The moment she was gone, Malfoy picked up something from the grass, Neville's dropped remembrall. He tossed it in his hand, smirking. Look what the clumsy oaf left behind. Pansy giggled. Crabbe and Goyle chuckled stupidly. I sighed. Here we go. Malfoy sneered at me. How about I leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find? Say, on the roof of the castle. He mounted his broom, clutching the glass sphere. Catch me if you can, Potter. Malfoy straddled his broom, smirking like he owned the sky. Come on, Potter. Unless you're scared. I exhaled slowly. Why is it always the blonde ones? Draco out here acting like he's auditioning for Cobra Kai. Ron muttered, don't do it, Harry, Hooch said. But I was already mounting my broom. Yeah, but she also said don't move, and technically I'm moving up. Loophole. Before anyone could argue, I kicked off the ground. Wind rushed past as I rose. Malfoy zoomed ahead, holding the remembrall aloft. Catch it if you can. I leveled out beside him effortlessly, my broom steady as stone. You sure you wanna test that theory, Malfoy? 'Cause last time you challenged me, you ended up looking like a PowerPoint presentation with no slides. Draco blinked. What? Don't worry about it, I said smoothly. He hurled the remembrall upward, aiming to send it crashing down. But I angled my broom, shot past him in a clean arc, and snatched it mid-air before it even began to fall. Then, instead of landing triumphantly, I circled back toward Malfoy, extending the glass ball toward him. Careful, Malfoy. You almost dropped it. Would have been so embarrassing if everyone thought you couldn't handle a school broom properly. The Slytherin snorted. Even Pansy tried and failed to hide a giggle. Malfoy flushed scarlet. I meant to. Sure you did, I said, smiling like a saint handing out candy. Here. You can give it back to Neville yourself when he's better. Real noble of you. I pressed the remembrall into his hand and patted his shoulder. Hard enough to make his broom wobble a little. The laughter from the Gryffindors stung more than anything I could have said. I descended smoothly, broom touching down like it was custom-tailored. Ron gaped. Seamus whistled low. Hermione had that calculating look like she couldn't decide whether to scold me or take notes. Harry, Ron whispered, you just made him look like a right idiot, and helped him at the same time. I shrugged. Work smarter, not harder. That way your enemy thanks you for beating them. Dean squinted. Sometimes you say stuff that makes sense, and then sometimes you sound like a Muggle philosophy podcast. Don't worry about it, I repeated with a grin. Madame Hooch came striding back, eyes sharp. What happened here? Everyone went dead silent. Malfoy opened his mouth then shut it, clutching the remembrall awkwardly. I folded my arms innocently. Nothing, Professor. Just, holding the line, like you said. Her eyes narrowed. She glanced at me, then at Malfoy's burning cheeks. Finally, she huffed. Fline up. Practice laps, now. As the brooms lifted off again, I smirked to myself. 1 week in, and I've already turned Draco Malfoy into my unofficial PR agent. Beautiful. You thought I was done. Now that you know it's coming, drop some stones for me. Pretty please, shocked. 911p2. Chapter 13, ch13 Let him cook. I'd just landed from another lap when I noticed a flicker of movement at the castle's edge. Professor McGonagall, standing at a window, her stern gaze fixed on the training field. Arms crossed. Lips pressed thin. Watching. Well, there goes my quiet semester. I turned my broom, guiding it through a slow, perfect spiral descent, landing without even a wobble. Most kids crash-landed like they were exiting roller coasters, me? Smooth as butter. McGonagall's eyes narrowed, but not in disapproval. Calculating. When Madame Hooch dismissed us, telling us to practice balance and control or spend your first Quidditch match eating dirt, I hung back slightly, pretending to adjust my broom. Sure enough, the moment the others trailed off toward the castle, McGonagall was waiting. "Mr. Potter," she said briskly. "A word." Ron froze, whispering, "You're dead. She's gonna expel you." I sighed. "Relax, Weasley. If she wanted me gone, she'd already be holding the paperwork." McGonagall's eyes flicked to Ron. "Back to the common room, Mr. Weasley." Ron scurried. McGonagall led me across the courtyard in silence, her robe snapping with every step. At last, she stopped outside her office. "You flew today," she said flatly. "Yes, Professor. Everyone did. Don't play coy." Her eyes pinned me. "Your control, Potter. Your precision. That was no clumsy child wobbling about. That was a flyer with instincts." I tilted my head. "Well, she's not wrong. Do you know," she continued, voice softening just a fraction, "your father was an exceptional Quidditch player. And now, I find myself wondering if talent runs in the family." I considered my words carefully, then smiled faintly. "Maybe it does. Or maybe I just don't like losing to gravity." For the first time, the corner of her mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "Very well. I'll report to Oliver Wood this evening. He's Gryffindor's Quidditch captain. You'll be trying out as Seeker." An owl delivered the summons at lunch. "Mr. Potter, the headmaster requests your presence this evening." Ron went pale. "That's it. You're done. Expelled." "Knew it." I sighed. Weasley, if I was getting expelled, they wouldn't bother feeding me dessert first. Hermione frowned, whispering, "Just be respectful. Don't do whatever it is you usually do." "Define usually," I said, earning a glare. The stone gargoyle leapt aside at the password, "sherbet lemon," of course, and the spiral staircase carried me upward. Dumbledore's office was exactly as I remembered it from canon, shelves groaning with books, curious silver instruments whirring softly. Fawkes perched proud and radiant by the desk. And behind the desk, Albus Dumbledore, twinkle in his eye, hands steepled. "Harry," he said warmly. "Please, sit." "Lemon drop." I dropped into the chair, eyeing the sweets. "Is this a test? If I say yes, do I wake up in another universe?" Dumbledore chuckled. "Merely a sweet, I assure you." "I've heard much about your first week," Dumbledore began. "Transfiguration. Charms. Potions. Even flying." He studied me over his half-moon spectacles. "You have shown remarkable control for one so young. More than I expected." I met his gaze calmly. "I read. I practice. That's all." "Indeed." His tone was mild, but probing. "And yet, when I watch you, I sense experience. As though you are not merely learning, but remembering." I shrugged lightly. "Maybe I'm just old at heart." His eyes twinkled brighter. "Perhaps. But tell me, Harry, what do you want from Hogwarts?" The question hung in the air. "Careful, Potter." This is where Canon Harry would mumble something about belonging. "But me? I need to keep the mask in place." I smiled faintly. "To learn. To grow strong enough that no one can put me in a cupboard again." For a heartbeat, silence. Then Dumbledore's expression softened, beard hiding his frown. "A wise answer. And a sad one." He leaned back. "Power is a curious thing, Harry. It tests those who wield it, and those who fear it. Be cautious not to let your gifts isolate you. Noted, I said. Though honestly, I don't plan on monologuing about ruling the world anytime soon. Dumbledore chuckled. Good. That saves us both a great deal of trouble. He rose, his robes flowing like water. You may return to your dormitory. And Harry? Yes, sir. McGonagall was right. You are, not quite what I expected. But perhaps exactly what you need to be. As I left, the gargoyle grinding shut behind me, I muttered under my breath, cool. Vague mentor talk. Achievement unlocked. A passing suit of armor creaked, as if laughing with me. McGonagall wasted no time. That very evening, she intercepted me in the common room and marched me to the Quidditch pitch, where Oliver Wood was already waiting with a crate at his feet. Potter, she said crisply, this is Oliver Wood, Gryffindor's Quidditch captain. Wood, this is your new seeker. Do not waste him. Wood blinked. Wait, this is him? First year Potter. McGonagall's lips twitched like she'd swallowed a lemon. You'll see. She swept away, leaving us under the setting sun. Wood eyed me critically. So? You've flown before? A bit, I said, mounting my broom. A bit, he repeated flatly. Right. Let's see then. He tossed a golf ball-sized walnut high into the air. Catch that before it hits the ground. The ball barely left his hand before I shot upward, leaning into the broom like it was second nature. Wind whipped past, the horizon blurring. The walnut spun downward, I angled my dive, hand snapping out, and snagged it inches from the grass. I landed smoothly, flipping the nut toward him. Want me to juggle next? Wood gawked. Merlin's beard. You're better than Charlie Weasley was, and he could have gone pro. Cool, I said casually. Guess I'll start updating my LinkedIn. You're what? Never mind. Wood snapped open the crate. Inside, 4 balls. A red quaffle, 2 black bloodjars straining against their straps, and a small golden sphere that quivered faintly. This, Wood said reverently, lifting the quaffle, is the quaffle. The chasers score with it. Bloodjars, well, they'll try to knock you off your broom. That's why we've got beaters. And then he opened his hand. The snitch fluttered its wings. Gold glimmered in the fading light. This is what you'll be after. The seeker's job is to catch it before the other team's seeker does. Worth 150 points. Usually ends the game. I leaned closer, watching the wings beat. Canon confirmed. Timeline still locked in. Wood grinned suddenly. We're going to train you up. If you're this good already, you'll win us the cup. I'll talk to the team. First practice tomorrow. As he packed the balls away, I mounted my broom again, hovering lazily above the pitch. So. Canon Quidditch arc unlocked. Only difference? This time, I'm not playing desperate underdog. This time, I'm a weapon with finesse. I smirked down at the pitch. Let's see how Slytherin likes losing their crown. The next evening, I found myself back on the Quidditch pitch. The whole Gryffindor team was gathered. Fred and George Weasley, already grinning like I was their new favorite prank target. Angelina Johnson, tall, confident, arms crossed with a prove-yourself look. Alicia Spinnet, already tossing the quaffle in lazy arcs. Katie Bell, younger but bright-eyed, practically vibrating with energy. And of course, Wood, looking like he'd just been handed Excalibur. This is Harry Potter, Wood announced. Our new seeker. Fred whistled. First year. George elbowed him. Bet he's here 'cause McGonagall's got a soft spot. Soft spot, nothing, I said dryly. She saw me fly. Ask Malfoy how that went. That shut them up for 2 seconds before the twins burst out laughing. Oh, we like him. Wood released the snitch. Let's see what you've got, Potter. Don't lose it. The ball zipped off, golden wings a blur. I leaned forward, broom kicking into gear. The world blurred, wind biting, heart pounding, instincts sharp. I didn't chase blindly. I tracked shadows, flickers, the way dust stirred where it darted. Within minutes, I dove into a sharp roll, hand snapping out. The snitch trembled in my fist. The team went dead silent. I landed smoothly, tossing the snitch back to Wood. So, when do I get paid? Fred howled with laughter. Oh, he's perfect. Angelina smirked. Fine. You're good. But don't think you'll coast on talent. Quidditch is a team game. Fair, I said. But admit it, I look damn good doing the solo parts. Katie giggled. Wood just beamed like Christmas had come early. Life at Hogwarts settled into rhythm. Transfiguration, McGonagall pushed us into turning beetles into buttons. Mine came out perfectly shaped, sharp-edged, while Ron scuttled across the desk. Charms, Flitwick lectured on wand control. I dialed my lumos brighter and dimmer like a dimmer switch, earning another squeak of delight. Herbology, Sprout had us repotting Screech Snap. Mine didn't scream. Ron's bit him. Potions, Snape's hatred persisted, but my potions stayed flawless. It was a war of attrition I fully intended to win. After classes, while others loafed, I built my routines. Library hours, combing through spell theory, arithmancy charts, and magical linguistics. Journaling late into the night, experimenting with layering charms and shields. Parcel tongue practice whispered under my breath, useless for now but still mine to wield. Sometimes, I slipped up with slang. I muttered Big W after a clean spell cast, and Hermione blinked at me like I'd invented a new incantation. So in short. Classes? Easy. Training? Progressing. Quidditch? I'll crush it. The boy who lived? More like the boy who grinds. I smirked to myself in the library's candlelight. Canon Harry stumbled through this year like a baby deer. Me? I'm speedrunning with style. Okay, no more surprises. I.am.done. For today. Those who are wondering, did I delete the ch? Yes. Why? Stupid mistake I did which never updated L web novel. Sayonara. 911p2. Chapter 14, ch14 uninstalling. Halloween at Hogwarts was a production. Floating jack-o'-lanterns drifted under the enchanted ceiling. Tables groaned with sweets, pies, and roasted meats. Even Peeves was temporarily distracted by toffee, leaving chaos levels at manageable. Ron leaned over his plate. Best holiday ever. The Great Hall smells like Mum's kitchen times 10. Hermione smiled faintly from across the table. No tears, no storm off like canon. Ron wasn't mean here, just clumsy with words sometimes, not malicious. I smirked. Already diverging from canon. Butterfly effect, baby. The double doors slammed open. Quirrell stumbled in, turban askew, face pale. T-troll. In the D-dungeons. Thought you ought to know. He collapsed in a heap. The hall exploded into shrieks. Dumbledore rose, his voice booming magically. Silence. The chaos stilled. Prefects, lead your houses back to the dormitories. Teachers, follow me to the dungeons. The students surged toward the doors in nervous clusters. I frowned. Canon moment. Troll isn't in the dungeons, it's planted to distract. My eyes flicked to Quirrell's prone body. His breathing was too steady. Too calm. Nice performance, Voldy. 10 out of 10 drama score. The Gryffindor first years were huddled together, Percy Weasley barking orders like a nervous sergeant. This way. Keep together, quickly now. We rounded a corner toward the tower stairs when the stench hit first. Damp stone, sweat, and something rotten. Then came the rumble, deep, guttural, shaking the walls. And then it appeared. The troll. 10 feet of grey, warty flesh, dragging a massive club across the flagstones. Its tiny eyes squinted against the torchlight. Why is it here instead of girl bathroom? Did Voldy deliberately put him in the girl bathroom in the canon? The entire group froze. Screams erupted. Percy paled, voice cracking. Be back. Everyone, back. The troll bellowed, club slamming into the wall, spraying chunks of stone. Kids panicked, shoving to retreat. I stepped forward. Time to flex. Potter, what are you doing? Percy shouted. I raised my wand calmly. Winning. The troll roared and swung. Protego Maxima. The translucent shield snapped into existence, the club slamming into it with a thunderous crack. Sparks flew, but the barrier held. Gasps erupted behind me. Note to self, shield durability test? Passed. The troll reeled back, confused. I flicked my wand. Lumos Maxima. A blinding flash burst forth, lighting the entire corridor like a camera flash. The troll shrieked, clutching its eyes. Ron, I said coolly, not turning around, throw something. Ron blinked, grabbed a suit of armor's helmet, and hurled it. The metal clanged against the troll's forehead with a satisfying bonk. It stumbled, dazed. I stepped closer, wand raised, voice dropping into a whisper. An arc layered over Confundus, sharp and sibilant. The troll froze. Its thick brow furrowed, drool dripping as it swayed. Then it dropped its club entirely, blinking dumbly like someone had unplugged its brain. Silence. Then gasps. Dozens of Gryffindors stared at me like I'd just pulled a rabbit out of Voldemort's hat. I lowered my wand. And that, I said lightly, is how you uninstall a troll. A few students actually laughed, nervous and relieved. Percy was speechless, which was its own kind of victory. McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell arrived seconds later, wands raised. They froze at the sight, the corridor filled with Gryffindors, and me standing calmly before a dazed, disarmed troll. McGonagall's eyes widened. Potter. I shrugged. It was blocking the way to our dormitory. Figured we shouldn't miss curfew. Snape's face twisted. Reckless, dangerously reckless. But effective, McGonagall cut in sharply. He saved half his house, Severus. Quirrell twitched visibly, pale as parchment. Yet, Voldy, didn't expect me to patch this one, did you? Back in the common room, the story spread like fiend fire. Gryffindor first years couldn't stop retelling it, Harry standing against the troll, Harry shielding the whole corridor, Harry making it drop its club like a trained puppy. Ron clapped me on the shoulder. Mate, that was mental. But brilliant. Hermione nodded slowly, eyes still wide. You didn't just stop it. You controlled it. I leaned back in the chair, smirking. And just like that, the legend grows. The staff room was dim, warmed by a roaring fire. Candles floated overhead, parchment stacks littered the table. The troll incident had pulled nearly every professor into Dumbledore's quiet summons. Dumbledore sat at the head, serene, fingers laced. Fawkes dozed on a perch in the corner, tail feathers glowing faintly. Thank you for coming, Dumbledore said gently. It seems our Halloween feast came with additional theatrics. McGonagall, still pale from the sight of a subdued troll, spoke first. Albus, he shielded all of them. A first year, standing between an enraged mountain of a troll and 30 terrified children, and he held the line. Then blinded it, confused it, and disarmed it. Her lips tightened. I would scarcely believe it had I not seen the aftermath myself. She hesitated, then added with the faintest twitch of her mouth. And apparently, he declared afterward that he had uninstalled the troll. A cough escaped Flitwick that sounded suspiciously like laughter. Reckless, Snape hissed in his monotone voice, robes swishing as he stood. He flaunts power like a showman. Mocking even in crisis. He could have gotten dozens killed, himself included. He didn't, McGonagall snapped back. By sheer arrogance. Snape shot. That boy has his father's insufferable strut, his same need to perform. Severus, Dumbledore interrupted softly, his gaze piercing. You are not entirely wrong. But you are not entirely right, either. Flitwick adjusted his spectacles, voice squeaky but sharp. I saw Potter in Charms. His control is extraordinary. His humor? A mask, perhaps. But masks can be useful. He doesn't flail about in panic like most children. He calculates. He chuckled softly. Though I admit, the idea of uninstalling a troll, inventive phrasing. Even Sprout hid a smile behind her teacup. Dumbledore stroked his beard, the firelight glinting in his eyes. You see bravado, he murmured. I see strategy. Harry has endured much. Children adapt strangely to suffering. Some break. Some grow harder. And some learn to laugh, to hide their truth in jest. He leaned forward. He is not James. Nor Lily. He is his own. We must remember this. Snape glared but said nothing. McGonagall folded her arms. Regardless, he saved his peers. Gryffindor is alive tonight because he chose to act. That cannot be ignored. Dumbledore nodded. Indeed. Let us keep watch, but let us not clip his wings too soon. Power grows best when guided with trust, not fear. He twinkled, though his voice was still grave. Still. I suspect Harry Potter is going to make this year far more interesting than any of us anticipated. There was a ripple of reluctant agreement, and even a few smiles. After the troll fiasco, the Gryffindor common room wouldn't shut up about me. I was now officially the kid who uninstalled a troll and, apparently, had a spell named after me. Dean Thomas swore he saw me ride the troll like a horse. Lavender insisted I made it cry. And Seamus? He was selling Uninstallus Maximus as a joke curse to second years. I didn't bother correcting them. Never interrupt when you're being upgraded to myth. 2 days later, McGonagall called me into her office. Her expression was tight, but her eyes sparkled like she was hiding something. Potter, she began crisply, your performance at the flying lesson has not gone unnoticed. And now, with your encounter with the troll, I believe it is time you had the proper equipment for your new responsibilities. She gestured, and there it was, long, sleek, polished to perfection. The Nimbus 2000. Seeker of the Century deserves more than a school broom, she said, lips twitching almost into a smile. My jaw dropped. Oh damn! Canon reward unlocked. Thank you, Professor, I managed, reverently running my hand down the broom's shaft. McGonagall raised an eyebrow. Do try not to crash it into a wall, Potter. Gryffindor needs you alive. The week before the match flew by. Gryffindor treated me like a celebrity, students whispering whenever I walked by. At meals, Fred and George kept chanting Seeker. Seeker, until even Percy cracked a grin. Ron was my personal hype man. Mate, once you catch that snitch, Slytherin won't know what hit him. Hermione, ever the realist, countered, don't get cocky. Remember, tactics win matches, not just speed. I smirked. Relax, Hermione. I'll uninstall them too. She groaned. The stands were a sea of scarlet and green. The commentary box boomed with Lee Jordan's voice. And here come the Gryffindor team. And there's Harry Potter, first year, youngest seeker in a century. The Slytherin stands booed, led by Malfoy, who cupped his hands and yelled, "Try not to fall, Scarhead." I smirked back. "Try not to be irrelevant, Blondie." The Gryffindor section roared with laughter. Even some Hufflepuffs cracked up. Malfoy's face turned the color of sour milk. Madame Hooch blew her whistle, and we shot upward. Wind howled past, the pitch spinning below. The quaffle zipped between chasers, bloodjars cracked like cannonballs, and the crowd roared. But my eyes scanned for only one thing. There, a flicker of gold. I dove, nimbus tilting like an arrow. The snitch darted low, weaving between players. I cut across, inches from a bludger, felt its shockwave rattle my broom. Malfoy's heckling echoed from the stands, "Fall, Potter, fall." Instead, I pulled up in a perfect climb, rolling into the snitch's path. My hand snapped out. Snap! The snitch struggled in my palm, wings flaring. "He Shivoldi," I thought, laughing. Catching the snitch before the sabotage. Lee Jordan's voice cracked with excitement, "Potter's got the snitch. Gryffindor wins." The stadium erupted. Gryffindors stormed the pitch, hoisting me into the air. Fred shouted, "First troll, now snitch. Potter's uninstalling everything." The chant caught. "Uninstall! Uninstall! Uninstall!" I held up the snitch like a trophy, grinning ear to ear. Seeker of the Century unlocked. Troll Slayer title stacked. Reputation secured. Chapter 15, ch15 Emotions. A/N, usually I do author notes in the end, but yet this is special, it's double-length chapter. It's a gift for all the love and support you guys are pouring over a 4-day long FIC 4-day. You guys at least deserve this / Enjoy. The room of requirement tempted me, NGL. But then I thought, Quirrell is literally living rent-free in this castle. Last thing I need is him sniffing around if I vanish into magical cheat codes. So instead, I grinned in stealth mode. Empty classrooms, forgotten corridors, even the musty library corners no one bothered to dust. Lumos for light, muffling charms for silence, and a stack of books pilfered from the restricted section via borrow now, sneak back later. I was lifting weights in the mornings, dueling shadows in the afternoons, and transcribing runes at night. By December, my magical reserves felt like an overcharged battery. But power alone wasn't enough. People mattered. I started small, Ravenclaws who appreciated someone that actually respected their questions. Hufflepuffs who liked that I didn't treat them as the leftovers. And Cedric Diggory. Instant bro. Quidditch was a universal language. "Next time we play," Cedric said after one match, "don't hold back." I grinned. Mate, uninstalling Slytherin was just a warm-up. Even a few Slytherins noticed me. Not the loudmouths, but the thinkers, Theodore Nott, Daphne Greengrass, Blaise Zabini. They weren't friends, not yet, but we traded words like chess moves. Quiet respect. Meanwhile, Ron and Hermione? They'd become my people, my bois. No bullying, no misunderstandings. Just late nights in the common room, parchment sprawled everywhere, Ron joking, Hermione scolding, me bridging the gap with sarcastic quips. "Harry," Hermione huffed one evening, "you treat studying like a duel." "Because it is," I grinned. Knowledge versus brain rot. Ron laughed so hard he almost fell out of his chair. We weren't just friends anymore. We were orbiting each other like stars in the same constellation. Snow blanketed the castle, white and glittering. Hogwarts looked like a painting. Inside, warmth spilled from fireplaces and wreaths adorned the halls. Presents piled under the Gryffindor tree, and for once, I wasn't empty-handed. I'd made sure of that. Ron got a Chudley cannon set and enchanted chess pieces that could trash talk back. Hermione got rare magical theory books, expensive, imported, the kind of thing that made her jaw drop and eyes shine. Cedric got a broom Polish set, charmed for extra aerodynamics. The twins? A prank kit refilled with magic, probably a mistake, but worth the laugh. Neville received enchanted herbology gloves. Even the Slytherins I'd talked to got subtle gifts, not obvious but clever enough to show respect. And Dumbledore? A pair of socks, of course. Tom the barman at the Leaky Cauldron got a bottle of fire whiskey. McGonagall got a new tartan scarf. Everyone got something. No one expected it. The looks on their faces? Worth every galleon. That morning, one last gift appeared at the foot of my bed. No name. Just soft, shimmering fabric that pooled like liquid moonlight. The invisibility cloak. The note claimed it was my father's. My fingers lingered on it, heavy with irony. Lily, James. I'm not your Harry. But I'll honor him anyway. The cloak trailed like liquid moonlight as I entered the forgotten chamber. And there it was. The mirror. Tall, ancient, humming with magic older than Hogwarts itself. I stepped forward and froze. Not James. Not Lily. But them. My parents. My real parents. Anjali, with her kind smile and patient eyes. Anand, with his proud, crooked grin. My mum. My dad. The tears came before I could stop them. My throat clenched. I should have done better. In my old life, I'd wasted time. Too much time. Hours lost to scrolling, sleeping, daydreaming instead of doing. Dreams of careers, goals half pursued, ambitions left rotting. And then death. Pathetic, stupid death. A ceiling fan dropping on my head while I slept. I pressed my palm to the glass. I'm sorry, I whispered, but only in my mind. I disappointed you. I died like a fool. I never became what I promised. And now all I can do is carry your faces in a world that doesn't even know you existed. They smiled back. Loving. Forgiving. It made it worse. Would they still smile if they knew the truth of my wasted years? Would they be proud of me now? The ache hollowed me out. Strange thing, isn't it? The voice cracked the silence. I spun, cloak half slipping from my shoulders. Dumbledore stood there, calm as ever, his gaze unreadable but kind. The Mirror of Arist, he said softly, approaching with measured steps. It shows us not knowledge or truth, but our heart's deepest desire. I swallowed hard, forcing my mask into place. I suppose you saw, your family, he added gently. I nodded once. Not a lie. Just not the family he thought. But Dumbledore didn't leave. He studied me a moment longer, then said quietly, "Come. Let's talk." Minutes later, we sat in his office. Fawkes cooed softly on his perch, and 2 steaming mugs of hot chocolate hovered between us. Dumbledore sipped. "Tell me, Harry, how are the Dursleys treating you?" I stared into the cup. Then looked up. And for once, I didn't hide behind jokes. They treated me like shit. His face flickered, the faintest pain behind the beard. They starved me. Locked me in cupboard. Beat me with words if not fists. If I wasn't clever, I might have died like. I trailed off. But I'm still here. Because I chose to survive. Silence. Heavy. Finally, Dumbledore whispered, "I feared it might be so. And yet I hoped." I cut him off. "Don't hope, Professor. Just listen. If you want me to trust you, don't cover the truth with pretty words." I leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Let's test him. There's something else. Sirius Black didn't betray my parents." Dumbledore froze. "What makes you say that?" "I'm sensitive to magic. I feel it. There's a rat, Ron's pet. He reeks of human magic. Animagus magic. Old. Wrong. That's no rat. That's Peter Pettigrew. The real traitor. My father and his two friends as Remus is a werewolf, Sirius, Peter. All become animagus in their school years. The old man's eyes widened, sharp and calculating now. If I'm right, Sirius has been rotting in Azkaban without a trial. You want justice, Professor? Get him one. Free him. Compensate him. Clear his name. Dumbledore stroked his beard slowly, deeply moved and troubled. That would change much. It would change everything, I pressed. And it's the right thing to do. At length, Dumbledore nodded. I will pursue this, Harry. Quietly, but surely. If Sirius Black is innocent, he deserves both freedom and reparation. Relief washed through me. But, Dumbledore continued, voice firm now, until then, I must ask a promise of you in return. Stay within the protections of family wards, not the Dursleys, perhaps, but the Black wards if Sirius inherits them. They are old and strong. I leaned back, meeting his gaze. Good. Because I promised the Dursleys I'd never set foot in their house again. And I don't break promises. For a moment, something flickered across his face, guilt, perhaps, or respect. Then he gave a faint chuckle, though the sadness never left his eyes. Fair enough, Harry. Fair enough. Dumbledore POV**. Albus Dumbledore sat alone in his office, the fire burning low. Fawkes dozed, tail feathers glowing faintly, but the headmaster's mind was restless. Harry's words echoed. I promised the Dursleys I'd never set foot in their house again. And I don't break promises. Albus sighed, pressing his palms together. He had known the Dursleys were cold. He had not wished to believe they could be cruel. Perhaps it had been his own selfishness, needing Harry to remain behind Lily's wards, convincing himself the boy would be looked after, when deep down he had always known Petunia's bitterness ran deep. That guilt would linger for the rest of his days. But now a new path had opened. Harry's casual mention of Sirius, of Pettigrew, of blood wards on the Black Estate, Albus turned the pieces over like a chessboard in his mind. Doria Potter. Born black. Cousin to Arcturus. Through her, Harry's veins carried ancient black magic, however diluted. Enough to bind him to black wards if Sirius were declared Lord. It was elegant. It was right. And it freed the boy from Privet Drive forever. Albus allowed himself a thin smile. Perhaps fate is kinder than I deserve. But Sirius, that wound cut deep. Could it be true? That Sirius Black, once so devoted to James and Lily, was never the traitor? That Peter Pettigrew, small, unnoticed, pitiful Peter, had been the serpent in the grass all along? Harry's certainty disturbed him. But Albus had learned long ago not to dismiss instincts, especially from a boy like this. If true, Sirius had rotted in Azkaban for a crime not his own. And if so, Harry would not forgive the world lightly. Albus stroked his beard. We must move quickly. Quietly. Amelia Bones will listen. Kingsley Shacklebolt may be trusted. A trial must be forced into the open. And if Sirius were freed, the wards at Grimmauld Place would hold Harry as securely as Privet Drive ever had. Dumbledore leaned back, exhaustion pulling at his bones, but a spark of hope lighting his chest. Harry Potter, clever, sharp, more mature than any 11-year-old had the right to be, had survived cruelty, had stood against a troll, had won his house a Quidditch victory, and tonight had spoken with more bluntness than most grown men dared. Not James. Not Lily. But still their son, and perhaps something more. Yes, Dumbledore murmured to the fire. Fair enough, Harry. Fair enough. Fawkes trilled softly, as though in agreement. The fire in Dumbledore's office had burned low when he finally pulled a fresh sheet of parchment toward him. His quill hovered for a long moment before scratching in deliberate, looping strokes. To Madame Bones. I find myself troubled by an old case. I fear, in the haste of war, due process was abandoned. I would be most grateful if you might reopen the matter of Sirius Black, not publicly, but quietly. There may be more truth buried beneath the ashes than we believed. In confidence. Albus Dumbledore. He sealed it with wax, pressing the Hogwarts crest deep into the red pool. With a glance, Fawkes stirred, cooed softly, and took the letter in his beak. In a burst of golden flame, the phoenix was gone. A second sheet followed, his quill scratching faster now. To Auror Shacklebolt. Keep your eyes on Peter Pettigrew. Alive or dead, something about his supposed fate does not sit right with me. Report only to Madame Bones and myself. No others. A.D. He rolled it swiftly, slipped it into another tube, and gave it to a school owl that would not be suspected. As the owl vanished into the night, Albus leaned back, weariness deep in his bones. If Harry was right, if Pettigrew lived hiding as a rat, then the war had been twisted into a farce. James and Lily avenged by the wrong man's imprisonment. Sirius left to rot without trial. He could already hear the Wisengamot's outrage, the ministry's excuses, the prophet's scandalous headlines. But if truth came to light, justice could finally be done. And Harry would be free of the Dursleys forever. Albus almost smiled. The irony of fate, the House of Black, once twisted by bigotry and madness, might yet become Harry's sanctuary. Fawkes reappeared on his perch in a flash of fire, empty beak, song soft and reassuring. Dumbledore stroked the phoenix's feathers, whispering, "Fair enough, Harry. I will not fail you again." For the first time in years, Albus allowed himself to believe the world might still be mended. Ron's POV**. Life in the burrow was loud. Always had been, always would be. With 5 older brothers, 1 little sister, and a ghoul in the attic, Ron Weasley often felt like the background character in his own family. When the Hogwarts letter came, he thought, finally my chance to be noticed. But then Mum started fussing about Harry Potter. The Harry Potter boy who lived. Savior of the wizarding world. She said he was starting Hogwarts the same year as Ron. Ron spent weeks wondering what Harry would look like. He imagined someone larger than life. A scar blazing bright across his forehead like a lightning tattoo. Maybe rugged, maybe flashy, someone who strode into rooms with that chosen one glow. But when he met him on the train, he wasn't flashy at all. Taller than Ron expected, lean, messy hair that wasn't for show but just messy. His eyes were sharp, alive, like they were always 3 steps ahead. His scar? So faint Ron almost missed it. Hardly the beacon he expected, just a pale mark, fading into the skin. And no glasses either, he didn't squint like Percy did over books. "Blimey," Ron muttered later that night to Seamus. "He doesn't look like a legend. He looks like he could be anyone. But when you talk to him, Merlin's beard, you know straight away he's not." Hermione's POV. Hermione Jean Granger had always been the smartest person in the room, and the loneliest. Books were her friends, logic her companion. When the Hogwarts letter arrived, she nearly burst from excitement. Magic was real. Her chance to belong was real. But along with excitement came nerves. Everyone in the wizarding world already knew Harry Potter. She'd read modern magical history 3 times before September. She pictured a boy with a fierce scar, battle-scarred from destiny, wearing glasses cracked from fighting off evil. But when she first saw him in class, not at all what she imagined. His scar was there, yes, but faint, barely noticeable. His face wasn't shaped by tragedy but by a certain calm sharpness, like someone who knew more than he should. No glasses. No fragile look of a boy who barely survived. And when he spoke, it wasn't like the heroes she read about. It was like someone who weighed every word. Half the time he spoke with a dry wit that left Ron snorting and Hermione scowling, and yet she always found herself smiling a second later. In the library, she caught him devouring books far above their year. Not pretending, not stumbling, just absorbing. And for the first time, Hermione wondered if she might have found someone who could keep up with her. When the egg cracked in Hagrid's hut and Norberta blinked her bright, reptilian eyes, Harry didn't see just a dragon. He saw potential. "Blimey, isn't she beautiful?" Hagrid crooned. Ron leaned in. "I mean, she's brilliant, but—" "Hagrid, you can't keep her." Hermione looked horrified. "It's against the law. And dragons are." Ron panicked. Hermione scolded. Hagrid cooed. But Harry leaned in, calm, letting the dragon sniff his hand. "She doesn't belong in a smuggler's bag," he said finally. "She belongs here. Controlled. Respected." Hermione blinked. "But dragons are illegal." Harry smirked. "So are a dozen other things Dumbledore's let slide if it benefits the school. We just have to reframe it." The next day, in front of Dumbledore and McGonagall, Harry laid it out clean. Hogwarts could build the first dragon sanctuary on school grounds. A warded reserve near the Forbidden Forest. Students could study dragons safely. You'd turn a problem into a unique advantage, an addition of NEWTCOMC. McGonagall bristled. "Absolutely outrageous." Dumbledore stroked his beard, eyes twinkling. "And yet, inspired. With proper containment wards, it might be safer here than anywhere else. And quite educational." Harry pressed. "It also stop black market smuggling. Better to regulate than ban." McGonagall glared. Dumbledore smiled. Decision made. Within weeks, the foundation of the Hogwarts Dragon Sanctuary was laid near the Forbidden Forest, hidden behind ancient wards. Norberta was the first resident get studied, cared for, admired. Ron POV**. 9 months at Hogwarts had flown by, and Ron Weasley still couldn't quite believe the bloke snoring in the bed across from him was the Harry Potter. Except, he wasn't like the Harry Ron imagined before school. Not flashy nor dramatic. Just different. Harry was stronger than the rest of them. Not just Quidditch strong, but properly fit. Ron had caught him sneaking out for runs at dawn, had seen him doing push-ups in the dorm when he thought no one was watching. The other first years wheezed after climbing the astronomy tower. Harry looked like he could keep going another mile. And the magic Merlin's beard. Ron had grown up with older brothers who all had their talents, but Harry was ahead of everyone. First-year charms came to him like second nature. He flicked a wand with precision, the professors nodded at it. When Neville's cauldron threatened to explode, Harry had neutralized it in seconds, faster than Snape. But it wasn't just power. It was how he used it. Harry listened. He wasn't above them, not lording his skill like Percy or Malfoy. He cracked jokes, he teased, he played chess with Ron late into the night like any other boy. Ron grinned at the thought. Best mate I could have asked for. Maybe best bloke I'll ever know. Still, danger followed him. Trolls. Dragons. Rumors of something hidden in the castle. Ron knew the risk. But he also knew one thing clear as day. I'll stick with him. Always. Hermione POV**. Hermione Granger prided herself on being rational. Logical. A girl who measured the world by books and rules. But Harry Potter defied rules. 9 months of knowing him had been enough to see it. Harry wasn't just ahead in lessons, he was years ahead. His spells were sharper, his control steadier, his theory broader than anything a first year should touch. When Hermione brought up arithmancy texts, Harry didn't blink. When she tried discussing the roots of Latin incantations, he was already halfway to the answer. Yet, he wasn't arrogant about it. He listened. Really listened. When she ranted about homework or excitedly shared some obscure fact, he looked at her with those sharp green eyes and paid attention. And when he joked, oh, he joked like a boy his age, snarky and silly, pulling Ron into fits of laughter until even Hermione had to hide a smile behind her book. It was balance. Strength and wisdom one moment, childish humor the next. Somehow both. Hermione hugged her knees one night in the girls' dorm, staring out the frosted window. He's dangerous, she admitted to herself. The troll, the dragon, the way he stared at the forbidden forest like it was a puzzle waiting to be solved, it all screamed danger. But he was also her best friend. The first person who made her feel less like an outcast and more like she belonged. And she knew, without hesitation. I'll follow him. No matter what it costs. If the world turns dangerous around Harry Potter, then so be it. I'll stand beside him. In 6 months, they had gone from strangers on a train to something more than friends. Harry was power and mystery. Ron was loyalty and heart. Hermione was reason and fire. Together, they weren't just surviving Hogwarts. They were changing it. And deep down, each of them knew, the road ahead would only get darker. But they had made their choice. Harry Potter was worth it. Chapter 16, Ch16 You serious? Hogwarts had slipped into routine. Not boring, it's never boring, but the kind of rhythm where each day folded into the next, equal parts madness and normality. For me, normal meant grinding harder than anyone else could imagine. Most nights I snuck into abandoned classrooms. With one flick, sparks jumped. With another, a shield shimmered into place. Scudum resonare, I muttered, and the dome rang like glass struck by a hammer. I laced it with disarming charms or stunners, watching the spells bounce back at whatever unlucky chair or desk stood nearby. First years were supposed to be learning levitation charms and fire-making spells.